Okay, Chair, we're now live.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this virtual meeting of the Plans Committee of Charnwood Borough Council. There are a number of things I would like to remind people of before we start with the items on the agenda. Please note this meeting is being live streamed and recorded, and the recording will be made available on the Council's website following the meeting. Under the openness of local government bodies regulations, people may film or record this meeting, and this is outside the Council's control. However, people wishing to film or record the meeting should do so in a way that does not disrupt the business of the meeting. Also, so that the meeting is not disturbed, could I ask everybody present to please turn off your mobile phones or switch them to silent and ensure your environment is distraction-free. And can I remind everybody that this is a public meeting, so please conduct yourself in an appropriate manner. Thank you. As this is a virtual meeting, it will run slightly differently. Members will need to introduce themselves and state their name and confirm that they can hear and see the proceedings. This is important for the purposes of recording attendance and transparency of the meeting. I will do this by undertaking an alphabetical roll call. Members will use the raise hand feature in the participant section of the Zoom software if they wish to speak, and will be allowed to do so in a queue system. Voting will be undertaken by a roll call or all present in alphabetical order. Each member will state their name and how they wish to vote, for, against, or abstain. Speakers will be called forward at the appropriate time by the chair, and their microphones will be unmuted by the co-host. Speakers have 5 minutes each, and they will be timed by the co-host. When you have 1 minute with time remaining, a bell will sound, and the co-host will mute you at the end of your 5 minutes. Now, some applications have 2 speakers on the same point, an objector or for or against. In that case, the 5 minutes is shared between the 2 of them and is equal. If one person takes a bit longer, it does not, that will come off the next person speak. So if you've got 2 of you for 5 minutes, that's 2.5 minutes each. I'm now going to call out the names of each member in alphabetical order to confirm their attendance. Councillor Ian Bentley.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Ian Bentley here. I can see and hear you.
Thank you. Councillor Bolton.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Bolton here. I confirm that I can see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. Councillor Campsell.
And see the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Charles.
Thank you, Chair. I can confirm. Councillor Charles here. I can see and hear the proceedings.
Yeah. Councillor Forrest.
Good evening, Madam Chair. I confirm that I can both see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. Councillor Grimley.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Grimley, I can both see and hear the proceedings.
Good. Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. I confirm I can both see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. Councillor Ranson.
Thank you, Chair. I can both hear and see the proceedings.
Thank you. Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Chair. I can both hear and see the proceedings.
Thank you. And Councillor Tassell.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I can both see and hear the proceedings.
Thank you. And Councillor Ward.
Yes, Chair, I confirm I can see and hear the proceedings. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair, Councillor Capleton needs to confirm.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
Councillor Capleton.
Good evening, Chair. Yes,
I think he said he can see and hear. Thank you. I'm going to now confirm the officers that are in attendance. Jacqueline Jackson, the Group Leader, Development Management. Karen Brightman, Team Leader, Development Management. Deborah Liggins, Senior Planning Officer. Catherine Harrison, Legal Advisor to the Committee. Matt Gadger, Information Development Officer and co-host for this meeting. Nadia Ansari, Democratic Services Officer and clerk for this meeting. And Karen Widdowson, Democratic Manager and co-host for this meeting. Thank you. And Nadia Ansari, the clerk, would you like to confirm who's in the speakers that are in the virtual gallery waiting to speak, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I confirm in the gallery we have got Ms. Alison Cook, Councillor Jenny Boker, Councillor Sue Gerard, Councillor David Snart, Mr. Darren McAuliffe, Mr. Darren Abbott, Helen Jarvis of the Houghton Parish Council. We've got Ms. Karina Duncan, Ms. Kim, Mr. Richard Evitt, Mr. Robin Williams and Ms. Vivian Pipe.
Thank you very much. Do we have any apologies?
Yes, Chair. Apologies for this meeting have been received from Councillor Tillotson. Councillor Jill Bolton is very kindly substituting for her at this meeting.
Thank you very much. We now move on to item 2 of the agenda, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. The committee is asked to confirm as a correct record the minutes of the meeting held on the 27th of August 2020. I will now call out each committee member in alphabetical order to respond. Councillor Bentley.
For, Chair.
Councillor Bolton.
Abstain. I was not at the last meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Camsell.
For, Chair.
Yeah. Councillor Capleton. I think you're muted, Councillor.
In for and in favour, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Charles.
In favour of the minutes, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Forrest.
For, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Grimley.
Thank you, Chair, for the minutes.
Thank you. Councillor Ransom. I know I missed you, Councillor Lowe. Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. For.
Councillor Savage.
For, Chair.
Councillor Tassell.
For, Chair.
Thank you. And Councillor Ward.
For, Chair.
Thank you. And myself as Chair, Councillor Fryer. For. The minutes of the previous meeting have been confirmed as a correct record, and I will sign them and they will be returned to the offices in due course. Item 3, questions under committee procedure 12.8. I've received no questions. Ms. Ansari, the clerk, can you confirm that no more have been submitted?
Yes, Chair, I can confirm no further questions have been received for this meeting.
Thank you very much. Item 4, disclosures of pecuniary and personal interest. Are there any disclosures of interest? I haven't had any disclosures.
Chair, just my hand up. It's just a personal interest in item 3, the Aldi application. I do actually shop quite often at that particular store because I live close by. I also know a person that works in one of the bit buildings adjoining that. I've not discussed the application with anyone. I'm here with an open mind.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that'll be noted. Thank you. Is there anybody else? I'm going to have to put the list up in a minute. No. Right.
Oh, sorry to interrupt, Chair.
Yes.
I believe Councillor Forrest would have a declaration to make as she is speaking on one of the items.
Yes, I do beg your pardon. I do have an interest on item 4, application 20 P20 1161/2. This is an application in my ward, and I will be speaking to the committee on this item. Thank you. I do apologise.
No, that's all right. Thank you. Thank you very much. Right, there are no further disclosures of interest. We now move on to the planning applications. Just for clarification as we move forward, what we have been doing at the plans meeting, the Vice Chair and myself have been sharing the proceedings. It helps us, but I think it also helps the other members of the committee that we have a slight chair, because it's quite intensive now with us all having to do the voting. So I shall be doing item 1. Councillor Bentley, the Vice Chair, will be doing applications number 2 and 3, and I will return to you in item 4. So we now move on to the first application we're discussing, which is P20/1079/2 Houghton Store at Wymeswold Road, Houghton. Now there was an extras report on this, which you will all have received. So I would now like to ask the planning officer, Deborah Liggins, to present the application. Mr. Everett is speaking.
That's correct, Chair. I hope you can hear me.
No.
No, we don't do. It's not speakers yet, Chair.
No, I did say for the planning officer.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure why Mr. Everett's been brought in at this point. It's after the presentation.
Yes. So, Deborah, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, can I have the presentation, please? Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Item 1 is on page 8 of your agenda and relates to Houghton Store on Wymeswold Road in Houghton. The application is called before Plans Committee by Councillor Boker, who has concerns as set out in the officer report. Planning permission was granted for the use of this former grain store for use as a Class B8 warehouse and store, and this application seeks planning permission to continue that use without compliance with conditions 2 and 3 of the planning permission, which related to who could operate the use and which also prevented the use of any part of the open area of the site for being used for outside storage. For clarity, members' attention is drawn to page 11 of the officer report, where the statement from the applicant is referred to in the second paragraph to confirm the applicant considers that the original planning conditions are a hindrance to rural economic activity, and the officer wasn't referring to the proposed conditions, which are agreeable to the applicant. Next slide, please. So this is a copy of the original planning permission, and you can hopefully see that condition 2 states this permission is solely for the benefit of the applicant and shall not run with the land. And the reason for that was to enable the local planning authority to properly consider the detailed proposal of any subsequent owner or applicant in the interests of highway safety. And condition 3, which states no storage of any description shall take place on the open land within the curtilage of the site. And the reason for that was to make sure that the site doesn't fall into an untidy condition in the interests of the character and appearance of the countryside. Next slide, please. So this is the location of the site, which is approximately 1.3 kilometres from the centre of Houghton and is within the countryside between Houghton and Wymeswold. You can see that the site is significantly set back from the road and is served by a shared access drive, which also serves dwellings. To the east, you might be able to see the separate vehicular access drive which joins Wymeswold Road and which leads to a Showman site and its associated residential caravan plots. To the south is the solar farm at the former Wymeswold airfield. Next slide, please. So here we have an aerial view of the site. You can see the application building, which is the long white coloured building to the right of the image. The Showman site is also visible to the east, and the application site forecourt, and you can see the woodland at the back and to the rear. Next slide, please. So these photos of the building and the forecourt, you can see from the top left image shows the existing building, which has 4 loading bays with single and 2-storey temporary offices to the left of the photo. The applicant is aware that planning permission for the office buildings has recently lapsed, and the council is informed a further application will be made to retain these shortly. The main building, though, is now split internally and is occupied by 2 different businesses, both operating the storage of their goods pending redistribution. The use, although operated by 2 different companies, neither of which is the original applicant, is therefore still operating as a warehouse, which was the use granted under the 2002 permission. Next slide, please. This is a view of the wider context of the site, and you can see the landscape context of where the building is. Your attention is drawn to the small building on the right-hand side, just in front of the big warehouse, around which a limited amount of open storage is now proposed to take place, as can be seen on the next slide. Next slide, yeah. This shows the building and forecourt layout with an area proposed outside storage shown as the red hatched area to the right hand side. You can also see the site access road to the Showman site just to the right there, and also the nearest residential caravan plot is also shown on the plan. Next slide, please. So key considerations, the principle of the development, members will be aware decisions on planning applications are required to be made by law in accordance with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. The site is within the countryside in what might otherwise be regarded as an unsustainable location in transport terms, but the site already benefits from an authorised general warehouse and storage B8 use. Although the original permission was in 2002 and new planning policies and guidance have come into effect in the intervening years, policies in the development plan and the guidance contained in the NPPF, the National Planning Policy Framework, still support proposals for rural diversification and the sustainable growth and expansion of rural businesses. The B8 proposal is still seeking to retain its authorised use, but with a variation to 2 conditions, and whatever decision members take tonight, the B8 use will still subsist. The proposal is therefore considered to be acceptable in principle, subject to the other considerations as listed. So the impact on landscape character, policies CS11 and CS1 seek to protect the character and appearance of the undeveloped countryside, but do allow for small scale development which meets specific criteria. The proposal involves no changes to the external appearance of the building, but seek the limited amount of outside storage, which would have the potential to impact on landscape character. However, the applicant has provided the plan limiting the storage to a particular area of the site, as you've seen, and the officer report recommends condition 2 be imposed to contain storage to that hatched area. So adequate car parking and circulation space remains available, And the condition would also limit the height of any stored items to not exceed 3 metres in order to ensure that the visual impact of the storage can be effectively controlled and monitored. It's therefore considered that this element of the proposal would accord with policy CS11, CS1 and 2, CS2 of the core strategy, and policies EV1 and CT2 of the Borough of Charnwood Local Plan, and policy WV1 of the Draft Neighbourhood Plan. In terms of highways and parking, the applicant has provided data information about average daily traffic movements to and from the site as set out in page 21 of your agenda. And this has been reviewed by the Leicestershire Local Highway Authority, and it has raised no objections based on the results, which indicate fewer HGV movements to and from the site under the proposal as compared to which could have occurred under the original personal planning permission. Several residents of Houghton object to the proposal on highway grounds, stating that Wymsworth Road narrows in the village and large vehicles pass close to dwellings, and this is acknowledged. However, members tonight need to be mindful that it's not for the applicant to solve all the highway danger issues of HGVs using the section of road or the junction with the A60, but only to mitigate the effects of traffic generated by the proposal, which shows a reduction in movements as compared to the likely original scenario. Members are also reminded that under the original planning permission, there were no restrictions in place by planning condition which sought to limit the number, the frequency, the size, type or weight of vehicles which can visit the site now. It was considered that such a condition wouldn't meet the necessary legal tests given the building's previous unrestricted agricultural use. So in summary, it's considered that the applicant has demonstrated to the satisfaction of the local highway authority that the highway impacts of the proposal would not be severe, and that a safe and suitable access is provided to the site, which also has an adequate quantum of parking available to meet the standards. The proposal therefore accords with policy TR18 and the NPPF, and there are no tenable highway reasons to support a refusal of planning permission. In terms of the impact on amenities, the current B8 use is unrestricted in terms of hours or operations or the frequency of vehicle movements. And it's clear from respondents to the application that nearby residents have experienced a degree of amenity impact since the building became operated by 2 businesses. And it's within the remit of members tonight to consider those additional impacts and assess whether they can be mitigated through the imposition of new planning conditions. In particular, residents close to the site complain about vehicle-mounted refrigeration units causing noise through the night, and about the nighttime operation of vehicle reversing warning systems. So it's recommended that in the event planning permission is granted tonight, a condition be imposed to limit the hours of HGV movements taking place to or from or within the site, including the operation of those chiller plant units and reversing warning systems, to between the hours of 6 in the morning until 9 in the evening on any day of the week. It's considered that this would satisfactorily address amenity concerns raised by the closest residents to the site. And if such a condition were to be imposed, it's considered that the proposal would accord with policies CS2 and EV1, which seek to protect the amenities of people who live or work close to the development. So in conclusion, it's considered that the proposal would accord with policies as set out in the report, and that planning permission should be granted subject to those conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We now have 4 speakers, and the first one is Mr. Richard Evatt. You have 5 minutes, Mr. Evatt. A bell will sound after 4 minutes, and if you're still talking at 5 minutes, you will be muted. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening to the committee. My name is Richard Everts, and I've lived on the Wymeswell Road in Houghton for some 26 years. I presume the committee members have read the large numbers of objections to this application and are therefore fully aware of the levels of concern raised by the residents of Houghton and Houghton Park, whom I am representing this evening. These legitimate concerns have been vindicated over the past year by the fact that the applicant is already in breach of the current planning constraints and is prepared to operate without the appropriate permissions, giving rise to considerable noise and nuisance. There is every expectation that the granting of this application will lead to an increasingly unacceptable impact on the local roads and communities. Removal of conditions 2 and 3 will lead to multi-usage of the site and the subsequent increase in the volume of traffic, particularly large goods vehicles accessing the store and adding to the already unacceptable levels of noise and nuisance. The historic data on vehicle movements presented by the applicant cannot be verified. What happened some 40 years ago at the then grain store does not take into account the present increase in residential properties, both in Houghton and Houghton Park, additional traffic using the Houghton store, increased traffic generated by the scale of house building in Wymeswold and by the expansion of Wymeswold Business Park and the other agricultural and transport operations located on the Wymeswold Road. My concerns are further increases in traffic, particularly large goods vehicles, will have an unacceptable impact on highway safety at the junction with the A60 and the eastern approach into Houghton, both of which are situated on blind bends and have been the site of several accidents, causing injury and extensive damage to property, 2 times to my building. Additionally, the narrowness of the road in Houghton often requires large vehicles to mount the pavement to avoid parked cars. This unacceptable impact was supported by comments from the Leicestershire County Council Highways Department made in a note to the planning officer in 2010 when the application was made to remove conditions 2. And I quote, "I am concerned that the location of the site is unsuitable both in terms of the local roads network and a sustainability point of view. Any further increases in vehicle movement will also have an unacceptable environmental impact on the quality of the rural environment in Houghton, Houghton Park and along the Wymeswell Road. It would increase noise, vehicle emissions, vibration and pollution, which will not only affect the health and well-being of the residents, but also have a detrimental impact on the historically important houses and cottages situated only a few feet away from the edge of the highway. It would be perverse if a Charnwood Borough Council designated conservation area cannot be conserved by its own planning committee. In addition, recreational use of Wymeswell Road, which is so important for individual well-being, especially in current times, will become even more hazardous and difficult. Houghton Store is an historic accident. It was designed and built as a single-purpose building with internal storage and minimal parking and manoeuvring space. It fitted into the rural environment and was never intended to be a multi-use storage and distribution facility with external storage and overnight parking. If it were a new build application, it is unlikely that it would be supported by the Highways Authority. In 2002, your predecessors had the acumen and courage to protect the environment and the legitimate interests of local people, while still enabling the store to operate within the very sensible constraints set. I would hope that you will display the same qualities and come to a similar. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Everett. Deborah Liggins, did you want to come back on any of that now, or did you want to wait until you've heard some more of the speakers?
I'll wait until afterwards. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. You've made notes of the points raised.
Yes.
Thank you very much. I now call on Darren Abbott, who is the agent for the applicant.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to address the committee. I am Darren Abbott of DLP Planning Limited, representing the applicant, Mr. Fisher of Goldfish Property Private Limited. As detailed in the officer presentation, the application site has historically been used for commercial purposes, initially as a grain store and thereafter for the storage of timber, forestry and agricultural products following planning permission in 1994. Moving forward, planning permission was granted in 2002 for use of the premises as general warehousing storage purposes under use class B8, which was subject to regulatory conditions. Condition 2 restricts operation of the site solely to the benefit of the applicant, whilst Condition 3 restricts outdoor storage. The building has since been subdivided into 2 units, which in itself did not require planning permission, and this has operated in this regard for some time. On this basis, the proposal seeks to regularise the position through removing Condition 2 and updating Condition 3 of the historic 2002 permission. At the time of determining the 2002 application, the Council had regard to now predominantly superseded policy. However, the 6 tests concerning planning conditions remain applicable, having been carried over to the National Planning Policy Framework and amplified in the Planning Practice Guidance. Conditions are required to be necessary, relevant to planning, relevant to the development to be permitted, enforceable, precise and reasonable in all other respects. Planning guidance is clear that conditions failing to meet any one of the 6 tests should not be used. Further, the guidance is equally clear that permissions usually run with the land and is rarely appropriate to provide otherwise, with a condition limiting the permission to a company being inappropriate. It is in this context the case is presented that conditions 2 and 3 fail to meet a number of the 6 tests laid out, nor accord with the relevant guidance. Turning to Condition 1, restricting the operation of the site solely to the applicant, this was originally imposed in the interest of highway safety at that time to allow future consideration of alternative proposals. As set out in the committee report, the key test is prescribed at paragraph 109 of the NPPF, this being the development should only be prevented on highway grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety or the residual cumulative impacts on the road network severe. The application is therefore supported by a transport technical document prepared by highway experts considering the appropriateness of a B8 employment use operating in absence of such a condition, being minded of the position relative to the previous approvals. The document concludes that sufficient parking provision exists, that existing safe and suitable access arrangements could continue, and that the development would not give rise to a severe impact on the highway network, noting a net reduction in vehicle trips set out in the committee report. The statutory consultee, the local highway authority, agree with the content of the technical document, including the assessment methodology and criteria utilised, raising no objection to the removal of Condition 2 in terms of impact on the highway network and highway safety. As such, the condition is unnecessary to make the development acceptable in highway terms, nor is it a reasonable imposition. Concerning Condition 3, this was imposed in the interest of protecting the character and appearance of the countryside. However, the site is set a significant distance back from the highway and public viewpoints, being visually well contained by mature vegetation and strong boundary treatments coupled with the neighbouring land uses. A small contained area of storage is proposed to the eastern boundary adjacent the unit, with any views being limited in context of the long established employment use of the site and neighbouring land uses. Further, the transport document confirms there is no conflict with vehicle parking or manoeuvrers within the yard. For clarity, storage containers to the south of the site are beyond the application boundary on land that is not within the applicant's control. Imposition of this condition in its current form is not therefore necessary, or is it reasonable, with the modified wording as set out in the committee report allowing for a modest area of flexible storage space if required. Importantly, local and national policy seeks to support economic growth and in particular that of the rural economy, this being pertinent during the current pandemic. Removal and modification of these unnecessary and unreasonable conditions would eliminate the current barrier to development that exists, providing the opportunity for the site to continue providing valuable employment opportunities. Finally, I note local residents raise some amenity concerns, although it is clear that a range of commercial larger activities exist in the locality, including those at RAF Wymeswold, farmsteads and agricultural operations, for example, which may be the source of such concerns. This coincides with the Environmental Health Team's comments acknowledging that no complaints have been received in relation to the application site itself. Nonetheless, the applicant is supportive of the suggested Condition 3, restricting the hours for HGV movements, noting that their operations take place during daytimes and that goods are dry stored. With the above in mind, we would welcome your support in backing your officer recommendation to approve this application. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Abbott. I now call on Helen Jarvis of Houghton Parish Council.
Thank you. Members, when approving the use of Houghton stores for warehousing, condition 2 was imposed for a reason, to enable you to have control over any subsequent changes in the interests of highway safety. At the time, Highways advised that uncontrolled use of such a large building for warehousing could lead to a large number of vehicle movements being generated, and any increase in HGV movements would create additional dangers for highway users. This has not changed, and we are bemused by the latest Highways response to the lifting of conditions, which, as you will see from the extras, is in conflict with all previous applications on this site, and also your own previous decisions on this and adjacent land. It is incomprehensible that the data submitted suggests that 2 companies operating from the warehouse will generate less traffic than the original one. This permission was granted on the assertion that there will be just 3 employees plus 2 cars, 2 vans and 4 lorries each day visiting the site, considerably less than the 157 now proposed. An increase of traffic of 700% is unwarranted, but it is heavy goods vehicles using the weight-restricted road that are the greatest concern. The daily number of HGV trips has not been quantified by the applicant, but we can assure you that it is greater now than it was 6 months ago, and more than the 8 per day recorded by the County Council for the whole road in September 2014. As a parish council, we were first alerted to changes at the stores by complaints from residents about the increase in HGVs thundering down Wymeswold Road. The heart-wrenching letters of objection from those living at Houghton Park are further evidence that the recent occupation of the stores by a large-scale food distribution company has resulted in a significant change in the volume and the hours of HGV movements. Residents no longer need an alarm clock. For decades, Highways have repeatedly emphasised that this road is simply not suitable for such traffic. And had you been able to visit the site today, you would have noticed when travelling through Houghton that many listed buildings are barely 1 metre from the carriageway and pavements are narrow with low curves. The lack of off-street parking means it is common for large vehicles to mount the pavement, passing inches from the windows of living spaces. Our residents are terrified by the enormous articulated lorries that are now passing through our village, and it is vital that they are not made to feel uncomfortable or put at risk any longer. The national boom in cycling, the drive for daily exercise and new housing in Wymeswold has led to a rapid rise in recreational use of this country lane in recent years, with a reduction in bus service forcing some older residents to walk along this road, which has no footway, to collect goods from the pharmacy in Wymeswold. These road users will be left feeling exposed and anxious for their safety when faced with a 44-tonner. We do not want to witness another pedestrian death on this road. On-site safety is also a concern. The complex is rapidly expanding to become a mini industrial estate, with the offices to a pet crematorium in the house next door, offices in porta cabins which have exceeded the permitted time, and 3 rows of unauthorised containers with the doors left swinging open across parking spaces used by businesses from the store and visited by locals. You will see from the pictures we submitted this week that the pallets are already spilling outside the proposed storage area. Add into this the international shipping lorries manoeuvring, and it is only a matter of time before a serious accident occurs. You will see from the officer's report that this store backs onto the accommodation at Houghton Park, dwellings which do not have good sound insulation. You will also have noted that several occupants of that site have been upset by the sudden onset of vehicles arriving at all times, bleeping as they reverse, cab doors slamming, engines left running. Class B8 would not normally be allowed in such close proximity to residential accommodation, and we urge you to take this into consideration when making your decision. The very nature of a personal permission suggests that the change of use in 2002 should be viewed as temporary, and a previous attempt to lift condition 2 was withdrawn after your officer advised it would be refused because an increase in traffic, especially goods vehicles, would be detrimental to highway safety. This application should now be refused for the same reason, and also for the impact on residential amenity for our showmen at Houghton Park and those living in the village whose front doors open onto the pavement. Should members disagree, it is essential that the changes do not make matters worse, and we request that you impose even more stringent conditions than those already proposed to protect our residents now and in the future. There should be no operations at weekends, a limit on the number of HGV movements per day, and all traffic should be encouraged to leave or enter in the direction of Wymeswold Industrial Estate, the borough's strategic location for development of this type. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call on Councillor Boker, the ward councillor. Councillor Boker.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everybody. As you have heard, Houghton Parish Council and one of our residents have objected quite ferociously about this application along the lines of highway safety, pedestrian and cyclist safety, a definite increase in vehicle movements, whatever highway says, and the noise impact on residents. And I believe also inappropriate development for this location. In the past, as you know, I've been the borough councillor here in the Wolds for a number of years. And in the past, I have found it very difficult to enforce conditions on this site because it is down a very long track from the rural road called Wymeswold Road. Consequently, I have taken the site on a number of occasions to enforcement, and to some extent, I take my life in my hands when I go down there because they're not exactly friendly when you get down there. Conditions 2 and 3 on the original permission in 2002 were put there for a reason, and that was to control what the storage units were used for, and also to then limit the HGV movements to and from on the rural road. If you've got food preparation, etc. down there, it's only common sense to know that there will be an increase in HGV movements because all logistical firms now use huge HGVs. And neither Wymeswold as a village nor Houghton as a village can cope with these HGVs. And as Helen pointed out, the lane is used for recreational use as well by locals. And, you know, to some extent, they take their life in their hands all the time because as well as HGVs, we have cars that speed down there. It's also of great concern to me that if we have work in movement on the site 24 hours, 24/7 days a week, then the noise nuisance to the nearby Houghton Park is going to be actually quite unacceptable. I'm not sure, as I said, I found enforcing conditions on this site very difficult over the years. And I'm not sure whether just putting another condition on them to only operate between 6 and 9 on any day of the week is going to be effective. As we know, logistical lorries turn up when they feel like turning up, and usually the owner of the site can't do much about it. I'm also a little bit worried that if we allow these conditions to be removed, as we have seen the creeping expansion over the years, then we're in danger of this becoming a small industrial estate. And CBC policy is to direct businesses of this nature to strategic locations, not in the middle of the rural countryside. So my personal opinion is that this application to remove the condition should be refused, but I wait to hear what the planning officer has to say about this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Boker. I do have a hand coming up, but I'm going to go back to the officer, the planning officer, Deborah Liggins, to answer the questions or clarify some of the points that have been raised. Deborah, I do have one that if you could back during your talk, there was some talk of the path or the access being used for recreation purposes. So could you clarify when you do your answers, is the access to this site part of a public road or footpath or bridle path for people to actually use? I rather mistook it on the photograph that it was an access just for this site and it wasn't necessarily a public one. But anyway, if you could answer some of the points,
Yes.
Deborah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just going back to what some of the speakers were saying about the previous application in 2015, I believe it was, to vary the conditions, and that application was withdrawn apparently on officer advice. The Highway Authority at the time did object on the basis of HGV increased traffic. However, as set out in the officer report, policies and guidance has changed since then, and we now have the National Planning Policy Framework. In particular, paragraph 109 states that development should only be prevented or refused on highway grounds if there would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety or the residual cumulative impacts on the road network. So that's looking at other uses in the vicinity, if this would add, together with their traffic movements, a severe impact to the highway network. As said, the Highway Authority has reviewed in quite detail the TRICS data that has been submitted by the applicant, and as set out in the extras report, has accepted the methodology and the data analysis examples that have been selected for that exercise as being reasonable, and have not objected to the application on highway grounds. So we would be struggling, I feel, to support a highway reason for refusal. Just responding to Councillor Boker's comments that there is no food preparation taking place at the site. It's a company that takes wholesale food goods for supplying other outlets. So there is actual no food preparation or meals prepared on the site. So no kitchen equipment or anything that's in active use at the site. So everything is dry stored, as the applicant has said, for redistribution. Also, previous planning permissions did not restrict the type of goods that can be stored at the property. That's either inside the unit and without the recommended planning condition relating to outside storage. If the condition was lifted completely, as the applicant originally proposed, that would have led to widespread and unrestricted storage of items, which may have had a highway impact in terms of taking away car parking and circulation space, and also leading to a visual impact that would be harmful. Councillor Boker also mentioned about the enforcement of planning conditions, saying how this had been difficult for her to do in the past, but it's considered that the suggested conditions are in accordance with the 6 legal tests, and that they are necessary, relevant, enforceable and precise enough to be able to be monitored effectively by the council. And if residents notice that they were not being adhered to, then the council has the necessary powers to take formal enforcement action, which would have consequences for the operators in that way. Also, I think the parish council mentioned about putting on additional conditions to further curtail the hours and not allow them to use weekend working, for example. But I would just remind members that this is an existing business that does operate or could operate 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So to put on limiting conditions now to curtail those operating hours, there would need to be a really persuasive reason why that was necessary. As set out in the officer report, the extras, we're in a time where government is actively encouraging businesses to respond to the pandemic and to become more economically robust and recover as part of the overall recovery of the local economy. That's all I think for now, if anyone else wants to comment.
I was just asking about the path.
Oh, yes, sorry. As
the
far as I'm aware,
access.
yes, it's an entirely private road that leads to these business premises and a couple of dwellings up there. The reference to the pet cemetery is actually one of the dwellings uses a room as an office space for a self-employed business, but that the actual crematorium is well away from this site. It's not anywhere near, it's in a different village, so that doesn't operate, and the access road is private as I understand it.
So just for clarification, that wouldn't be used for recreation purposes?
The access leads to this business premise and private dwellings, so I can't see why it would. The access to the Showman site and for the Houghton Parks residential is the access to the right-hand side on the plan that I showed you initially, and is separately accessed.
Thank you very much. Now, yes, I note I have you, Jacqueline, and then I have Councillor Grimley. So would you like to come in first before I go back to Councillor?
Please, just to clarify, I believe what some of the speakers were saying was that Wymeswold Road is used for recreation rather than the access path.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Grimley.
Thank you, Chair. I have real sympathy with the local residents, because I too live in a village that suffers from HGV traffic and effect on local listed buildings and that sort of thing. We also have a weight restriction as well, but that doesn't seem to do a lot of good. But have to look at the facts on the table on this, unfortunately, and I'd love to be able to suggest a reason for refuse on highway grounds, but I'm struggling, especially as the local highways authority comments are supporting this. It is an existing warehouse, unrestricted access at the moment. I appreciate there were some previous conditions put on, but I think we get a chance to possibly control this current use with adding some conditions rather than it going to an appeal, which we might lose that opportunity if an inspector does look at this. So I think at the moment we've got the opportunity to sort of control these things at the moment as well, which will benefit the local residents. So reluctantly, I'm going to have to support officer's recommendation.
Is that a proposal?
That's a proposal, so yeah.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second that, Chair.
Right, Councillor Lowe. Councillor Savage, was your hand up? No.
I've taken it down, Chair. I was going to second the proposal.
Okay, thank you very much. I can't see any further hands up at the moment. They do come up in order for me. So has anybody got anything else they'd like to ask, either of the officers, or any comments to make? Councillor Forrest.
Thank you, Chair. Can I refer to page 11? I'm a little confused about the outside storage area. There are several references to it throughout the report, that it says the eastern side of the site, which the applicant indicated would be flexibly used for outside storage, parking or circulation space as required. I think that's a little vague. What kind of outside storage are we discussing? Are we discussing lorries parked there overnight? Are we talking about the storage of agricultural equipment? Do we know what the proposal for outdoor storage is? It goes on to say a condition could be attached to any grant of planning permission limiting the outside storage to this area, but I would want to know more about that outside storage and a suggested height limit of 3 meters. And I would also suggest that Ms. Liggins has suggested that the time should be restricted between 6 a.m. and 9 p.m. in the evening. I have to say, I think those times are too liberal. And bearing in mind, you know, the rights of the local residents to the quiet enjoyment of their homes, I would like to see that much more restricted, perhaps say to from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. and no weekends or bank holidays. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll go back to you, Deborah, to clarify those. I think at the moment there's no limit on the hours under the previous application approval. They can work 24/7.
Yes, that's right, Chair. And the suggested condition number 3 doesn't actually restrict the use of the building either, in accordance with the current operating use. It just limits the harms that would arise from vehicles moving around in and around the site to those hours as suggested. Those hours were suggested as being relevant and appropriate by our Environmental Health Service that, as we've already heard tonight, has not received any complaints from residents of Houghton Stores about noise or disturbance. It's likely that any complaints that have been made arise from different uses nearby rather than the activities of this place. Going back to Councillor Forrest's comments about the outside storage, in my presentation, I presented the plan that showed the red hatched area. So it's proposed that any outside storage should be just limited to that red hatched area. And in terms of it being flexibly used, clearly when there's no need to store any pallets or boxes or anything in between loading and unloading, that area would be available flexibly as the parking or circulation space as it is now. So the condition number 2 does limit it to that red hatched area. Again, there's no limit on or control over the type of things that can be stored, because there's no limit on the type of goods that can be stored within the buildings, or as a general warehouse use, it's not limited to certain products or materials. So, but the condition does limit the height, which is the important thing in terms of making it visually acceptable.
Thank you. I have Councillor Ransom, but before I go to Councillor Ransom, Jacqueline Jackson, you wanted to make a comment?
Yeah, please, Chair. Thank you. I just wanted to remind members that this is a quite a unique type of application that's in front of them. It is considering the removal of the conditions, not the use. The use is already established through the previous permission. So you're only considering the removal of those conditions, and those conditions had very specific reasons why they were imposed in the first place. So members have to be mindful of why they were imposed originally in determining whether they should be removed or not. And that's an important thought process that members need to go through. So just can ask members to remember that rather than thinking of this as a new application for the use. It's just a little reminder.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ransom.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just actually checking condition 3. It says from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. on night, 7 days a week. Could we not actually modify the weekend operation on that, because of refrigerated lorries? If there's from what I can see, could we not actually make on a Sunday, maybe other lighter hours, 9 till 12 or something like that? I'm just thinking of the residents.
I think, thank you very much, Councillor. I think it's already been clarified. There is no food being kept in refrigerated lorries, or have I got that wrong?
Well, it says refrigerated lorries here.
What page are you looking at?
I'm looking at page 23. It said that there's within heavy goods vehicle movement from within long unloading activities, including operations associated with chiller plant or audible movement alarms.
Okay.
And
Right.
what I want to make clear is that, you know, the fact is I would want to keep all these conditions, but I was just looking at maybe for the residents we could modify one of the weekend conditions so that it's not so rough on them, because the noise of refrigerator lorries can be quite horrendous in a rural area.
All right. Jacqueline Jackson.
Thank you, Chair. I think Debbie has already covered this.
Yeah.
The existing use is unrestricted. The conditions that were imposed that are proposed to be removed, that they weren't imposed because of neighbour amenity, you know, and that wasn't a consideration. So that disturbance is there. Now, what we are saying is that there may be some impact in terms of the neighbours, and we could create some benefit by limiting the hours, but you know, we have to be mindful there's an unrestricted use at the moment. To go a long way beyond what's being proposed, you have to have very good reason, and also you have to remember this is only the outside activity, so the movement of vehicles and things, as Ms. Liggins has already identified, the operation internally in the building isn't to be limited, because we can't do that because the use has already been granted. I don't know if Debbie wants to add anything.
Deborah,
no, you've got it correct.
Okay.
Yeah, as I said, this application is an opportunity to just address the impacts as arising from the removal of the conditions. So it was felt that the hours where the harm and the complaints have come is from vehicle noise and vehicle mounted refrigeration or chiller units that have been mentioned in letters of objection. So Environmental Health considered that the suggested condition, which included chiller units being switched off or no vehicular activity to that time, was appropriate.
Right. I have no further hands shown. We have a proposed officer's recommendation by Councillor Grimley, which was seconded by Councillor Lowe. So I shall now go to the vote, which will be done obviously by a named vote. And I would like you to say your name and also whether you are voting for, against or abstaining. So Councillor Bentley.
Councillor Bentley for.
Thank you. Councillor Campsell.
Councillor Campsell against.
Thank you. Councillor Capleton.
Councillor Capleton against.
Thank you. Councillor Charles.
Councillor Charles for.
Thank you. Councillor Forrest.
Councillor Forrest against, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Grimley.
Okay, Councillor Grimley for, Chair.
Councillor Lowe.
Councillor Lowe for, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Ranson.
For, Chair.
Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Savage for the officer's recommendation.
Councillor Tassell.
Councillor Tassell for, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Bolton.
Councillor Bolton against the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Ward.
Against, Chair.
Thank you. And my own vote is Councillor Hilary Fryer for. So that's if I could ask, sorry? Don't know what that is. It's not me. Right. If I could go to our legal ad person, Catherine, please. Harrison, to confirm the vote.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I get that as a vote of 8 for the proposition to go with officer's recommendation and grant permission, and 5 against. But if someone else could check that, so I think I've gone first.
That's what I had. Has anybody else checked it?
Chair,
No.
yeah. Oh, Nadia. Oh, yeah, sorry, Chair. I was just going to come in and say I'd got the same as Ms. Harrison. I'd got 8 for, 5 against, and no abstentions.
Thank you very much. Right. Thank you very much, everybody, and thank you to the speakers. We now move on to item 2, which Councillor Bentley is going to chair.
Yes, Councillor Fryer, thank you very much for that. So now on to item 2, P//0829/2, 11 Windmill Rise, Woodhouse Eaves. Take it away, Deborah.
It's going to
Once
be
you
me.
finish munching. So,
Yeah,
oh, sorry, I thought. Sorry,
Sorry.
I got Deborah's name on the paperwork here. Okay, Karen, take it away, Karen.
If I could have the presentation, please, Nadia. Thank you very much. Good evening, members. This is item 2 before you tonight, which is for extensions to an existing bungalow on Windmill Rise in Woodhouse Eaves. The extensions are to the north of the existing building and to the west, and they are to enable an additional bedroom and some bedrooms in the roof, and a new study, a bedroom, and a WC at ground floor level. Have the next slide, please. This is where the property is located. So you'll see it's on the corner of Windmill Rise with itself, because Windmill Rise sort of turns and curves around the application site. It's shown hatched green on that slide. Next slide, please. This is an aerial view of the site, so you can see the bungalow circled in red there that's subject to the planning application. If you look at the circled area, you can also just make out at the bottom there an existing garage that's on the site that's also proposed to be replaced. Next slide, please. This is a photograph taken from the it's taken from the front of the bungalow to the so sort of standing looking south. The bungalow that is the application site bungalow is the one on the right, so it's the one with quite a lot of greenery to the front of it. On the left there of that picture you can see number 9, which is set at a slightly lower level, because Windmill Rise, as the name suggests, does exactly that and rises up as you head towards the end of the cul-de-sac. Next slide, please. This photograph is taken from the side, so it's taken from the west, looking sort of from Windmill Rise again. The 2 rather large yellow arrows that you can see roughly indicate where the 2 extended areas would be. So the left-hand arrow is where the building is brought out. So it's where the bulk of the extension is, and then on the right-hand side there's also another small element of extension there. Overall as well, the roof height is obviously going to be raised to accommodate the additional rooms in the roof. Next slide, please. This shows the access from Windmill Rise, and you can see there with the white door the existing garage as it stands. Next slide, please. This photograph is taken from the back of the site, so it's it's on the right hand side there. The white building is the application property. So that's just sort of showing the rear and the side elevation of that, and the garden that's sort of set to the side at the moment. Next slide, please. This final photograph is a view of number 13. So it's taken facing south, basically. So you can just see there, number 13 is the cream building at the back, and that window is a high level window that serves a living area within that property. Next slide, please. So this is a block plan. So you can see there circled in yellow the two main areas where the footprint of the building would be extended. And then if you look at the bottom of the block plan there, you'll see there are 3 rectangles. The 2 on the left depict new parking spaces or parking spaces on the drive, and the one on the right is the rebuilt garage. So it's important to note that that's in a slightly different position to the existing garage. It's closer to the boundary of number 13, which is the property to the south there. It's also slightly higher to its ridge height. Next slide, please. These are the proposed floor plans. They're not awfully clear at this scale, but on the bottom plan is the ground floor plan. So at the front, there's a bungalow and a study, sort of to the left of the stairs. Those are new. And then at the back, it opens out into a sort of shared living area. At the bottom of the sort of T shape, if you like, there is a new WC and a new hall area that are created by extension. Looking up at the top, this shows the rooms in the roof. So you can see there are, I think there's 7 Velux windows proposed there, and this would allow additional bedrooms at the property. Next slide, please. This is the existing elevations, just to give you an idea for comparison. So I won't dwell on those for any length of time. Next slide, please. Now, these are the proposed elevations for the bungalow or the house once it's extended. So you'll see the west elevation there up on the top left. That's what you would see from Windmill Rise as it curves around the site. So that would be the view that the neighbour at number 26 would see. Obviously set back within the site, that would be. I'm not sure that you can see this terribly well because of the way that Zoom sets the screen out, but to the right of that is the south elevation of the property, which is what you would see standing in its garden. Below that is the north elevation, which is what you would see from Windmill Rise itself. And then to the left there is the east elevation, which is what you would see from number 9. So you can see the garage there on the left hand side, just to give some more context. Next slide, please. The main considerations before members tonight are those that are set out in the relevant development plan policies. So those are policies CS2, policy H7 and policy EV1. The first thing that those policies ask us to consider is that we look at design and visual impact. So we would normally, as set out in our own design guidance, look at design in terms of how an extension proposal sits with the existing dwelling and how it sits with the context in the area. Now, it's officers' view that these extensions, they're obviously not subservient to the existing dwelling because that's not the purpose of them. They change the dwelling, so it basically becomes a new and a different design within the street. So the important thing to look at there is, does that resultant dwelling fit with the context of the area? It's our view that it does, although the properties as you rise up Windmill Rise are quite uniform. There is a point on the corner there exactly where this property is, and as you turn the corner where that design ethos changes, and there are a lot of properties there that are slightly different and share a lot of the design features that this particular proposal picks up upon. It's also important to note that in terms of building line, when you look at the building line from the north, so the first view you get of the property going up Windmill Rise, it doesn't project any further forward than other dwellings there. And because of the changes in levels, it would still read, it wouldn't read as something that was awkward or out of context with the street scene. Sort of turning the corner, you have to take it, although it obviously comes forward, will come forward of the building line as is, because the property is set back and because of the changes in level, it's officers' view that again, it would remain in context in terms of its positioning. And I ought to just point out that the proposal uses a lot of features and materials that are already in the area, which ties in with the requirements in the village design statement. Moving on to the second point, as with any extension, it's very important to consider residential amenity. And as the report sets out, that's been done for the 3 nearest properties. So for number 9, which is the property before it on the hill as you're travelling along Windmill Rise, officers are satisfied that there would be no loss of light to the principal windows to that property, which are at the front and the rear. And we've assessed that using our own design guidance. There are roof lights along that boundary, but again, that's been looked at carefully and sections have been supplied to officers that show that those roof lights are situated at such a height above the floor level within the building and angled in such a way that there would be no clear view out of that. So we are satisfied that there wouldn't be a material loss of privacy to number 9 as a result of that. Obviously, as the report sets out, we've also looked at number 13, but that property is directly south, so and also at higher level itself. So there are no impacts in terms of loss of light there because the extended proposal and the slightly closer and higher garage are all due north, so they won't impact on sunlight to any great degree. And also that relationship does comply with the tests that are set out in our own SPD in terms of measuring impact. Finally, number 26, which is across the road. That property is about 24 metres away and again is set at a higher level. So as the report sets out, when tests looking at privacy, overlooking, over dominance are applied, there are no relationships there that would suggest that the proposal was contrary to our planning policies and that we should be refusing it. Just turning to the next point, I'll be very brief here. Heritage assets we mentioned in the report because there is a conservation area relatively close by. However, there's no intervisibility and it's sufficiently distant from this proposal that officers are satisfied there be no harm to the significance of that conservation area as a result of the proposals. Highways and car parking, again, another thing that we have to look at when assessing a proposal for an extension. This proposal provides 3 spaces, which meets with the advice in the highway standing advice. And as a result, it's our view that it would accord with policy TR18, which sets out the level of parking that we should be looking at for a dwelling of this size. Finally, I've added to the slide other matters because there's been one or two things that have been raised in the objections that we've received to the proposal. I don't intend to go through all of those now because they are covered in the committee report, but obviously if members have questions relating to any of those, they'll be able to ask those later on. Thank you, Chair.
Apologies. Thank you very much for that, Karen. We have had two objectors come in late who want to speak. So I propose that we allow the two late applicants to speak. I understand that I'll have 2.5 minutes each to speak, and I'm looking for a seconder for this.
Chair, I would like to second that the committee accepts the late applications.
Okay, thank you, Hilary. I'm going to ask that I'll call out everybody's names, either you're for or against. So, Councillor Bolton.
Apologies. For.
Councillor Campsall.
For, Chair.
Councillor Capleton.
For, Chair.
Councillor Charles.
For, Chair.
Councillor Forrest.
For, Chair.
Councillor Fryer.
For, Chair.
Councillor Grimley.
For, Chair.
Councillor Lowe.
For, Chair.
Councillor Ransom.
For, Chair.
Councillor Savage.
For, Chair.
Councillor Tassell.
For, Chair.
And Councillor Ward.
For, Chair.
Right, thank you very much. That's unanimous. So I'm going to ask Darren McCullough to speak first and then followed by Vivian Pipe. So you have 2.5 minutes each, and Karen from Democratic Services will indicate when you need to stop speaking. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Darren McAuliffe. I've lived here for 16 years. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to voice our objections to the works at number 11. Our main concern with the planned works is the loss of privacy in our lounge, dining room and rear garden. The planning report suggests that due to our elevated plot that an overlooking situation already exists. This is incorrect. Our lounge and dining room are protected by mature shrubs and trees to the height which screens the road and footpath, and our rear garden is protected by a 6-foot fence on top of a small retaining wall which again screens the road, footpath and neighbours' windows. The glazed gable end and south-facing skylight will look straight into our property and completely over our otherwise private rear garden. The height of these windows means that it is impossible for us to plant screening or to build anything to regain our privacy. The main bedroom will have 4 large skylights and a large glazed gable end. We see this as an unnecessary luxury at the expense of our privacy. All other rooms in houses on our street are lit by 1 window, and this seems sufficient. We would like to offer a compromise and ask that the south-facing skylight and glazed gable end be removed from the plans, which will offer us some privacy from being overlooked. This still leaves 3 large skylights in the main bedroom. I would also like to point out that the garage is being built further back, and also that the first floor plan, it's not the updated plans, and the skylights are wrong.
The skylights, the Veluxes are the wrong width. There are more updated plans. I think these are on the 16th of August. So the 2 facing towards us, the Velux is actually one massive Velux. And the rest of the Veluxes aren't 50 centimetres, they're actually 1 metre wide. And the fact that our land is so much higher than the road means that we're really exposed to this gable end that looks straight at us and the south-facing window. So it'll completely destroy any privacy all the way to the back door of our garden.
And lounge and dining room.
Yeah.
That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm now going to call on the agent, Karina Duncan.
Chair, we've got the other objector to speak, Vivian Pip. Pipe, sorry.
Sorry, I thought they just changed speaker from a male to a female.
I think that must have been a lady in the same household as Darren. It wasn't Vivian Pipe.
Ah, okay. That would have been there. Thought it was
Okay,
Vivian as well. Let me just go back to Vivian. then.
I think Vivian was still muted, unless I've misunderstood. Sorry if I have.
If I could just clarify, I thought they were using the same microphone, and I thought it was Vivian that was speaking as well. So I will allow Vivian just to come in just a moment to clarify.
Okay, thank you.
Hello? Can't hear me. Hello? Hello?
Hello, Vivian. We can hear you.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yes, thank you. I want to talk about the garage. And also I want to just mention that the two bungalows, number 11 and 13, which I am living in, is on the same level. There is no difference in level. So between the two, we're on the same level. The garage, the planned garage, will come right up to our boundary and also going further back, which then will block out our only window, which if you look, if you can see me at all, you can see our window behind me. Now this window we rely on for our light and for just the enjoyment of our living room. And I cannot understand why anybody would want to block it out completely, because that's what will happen. The garage itself is going to be built so high, it's only going to be a meter shorter than our own bungalow. So it'll be like a mini bungalow. And it makes it very hard. And I know whilst there is no right to life, there is certainly a right to protect the amenity value of our property. It could lead to mental health problems, anything. So I would urge you not to pass these plans, not to pass them. The man that's doing this is a property developer. He's going to walk away, and we are going to be left. You know, he doesn't care. You know, he's doing what he wants to do in order to sell his property, and that leaves us the way it is. So yes, it should be kept as a bungalow. And the garage, the original garage that's there, we've never had a problem with. It doesn't stop us from getting our light, but when they put this new one up, we will be in darkness in our living room, and it'll be just so depressing, and there's nothing we can do about it. And that's why we depend on you, councillors, to look and do something, because we need help. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm now going to call on the agent, Karina Duncan. Karina Duncan, are you there?
Hi there, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you if you'd like to proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thank you for allowing me to speak on behalf of the applicant at this committee this evening. The application relates to alterations to the existing dwelling to allow for first floor accommodation and an extension to the living area at the ground floor level.
I'm sorry, can I just stop you there just for a moment? I don't know whether everybody else can hear you properly, but I'm really, really struggling to hear you. I'm on full volume. Everybody's indicating we can't hear you. Can you try that again, please, and try and make it a little bit clearer if that's possible?
Yeah, no problem.
Proceed.
My microphone test is working. Can you hear me now?
I have to say it's better than it was before, and I think most people are sort of giving a bit of a nod so we can hear you.
All
so
right,
carry
no
on,
problem.
please.
Yeah, just
Thank
let
you.
me know if you can't hear me throughout.
Yeah, okay, your time will start again from now.
The existing garage, which is not suitable in terms of internal dimensions for car parking, is also proposed to be replaced as part of the application. The dwelling does require substantial modernisation, and the applicant proposes to upgrade the existing accommodation to achieve a dwelling which is suitable for modern day living. The applicant intends to utilise the dwelling as his family home. Throughout the course of the application, the applicant has responded to feedback provided by the case officer, and significant amendments have been achieved to the scheme, namely the removal of rear dormer windows, a Juliet balcony, and the removal of two-storey development to the south of the site. The southern extension was removed to reduce impacts to number 9 and its rear garden area. The alterations made to the scheme are considered to respect the building line along Windmill Rise. The increase in ridge height of approximately 0.77 metres, given that the roof is angled away from neighbouring properties to the east, is not considered to breach the 45-degree right to light rule when measured vertically. Roof lights positioned to the rear elevation sit at 1.7 metres from the proposed first floor level to ensure that no adverse amenity impacts by way of overlooking would arise. The applicant supports the recommended condition to remove permitted development rights for additional openings to the eastern and western elevations and roof slopes. With regard to the proposed garage location, it is noted that an objection has been made in relation to the loss of light received through a high-level window to the northern elevation to the dwelling to the south of the site. All efforts have been made to address neighbour concerns. The proposed siting of the garage to the south of the site is considered to be planning betterment when having regard to permitted development rights, which could allow an outbuilding of a higher eaves level in this location, which would have a greater amenity impact, something which has been cited within the officer report. It is also understood that this high-level window in question is the secondary window, and that a glazed conservatory to the rear of the dwelling adjoins this room. The scheme introduces a suitable palette of external materials, giving the mixture of designs and styles of existing dwellings to the west of the site. Front-facing dormer windows are an existing design feature within the street scene, and modern glazing is not considered to result in any adverse impacts to the visual appearance of the street scene or character of the area. The site would propose the required amount of off-street parking for the development and would support the reuse of an existing vacant property. Overall, it's considered that the applicant has made significant alterations to the scheme in order to address the concerns raised by the case officer. The proposal is now considered to comply with the relevant policies within the local plan and relevant SPDs. With the above in mind, we hope that members support the officer recommendation to approve the application, subject to the imposition of planning conditions. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Can I now call upon Councillor Snarts, the ward councillor?
Can you hear me, Chairman?
Yes, we can, Councillor Snart. As you know, you've got 5 minutes. Off you go.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for letting me speak on your planning committee. I understand it's important in these challenging times to make sure we councillors only bring planning applications that are of great concern. Therefore, I'm visiting this site and reviewing interest party objections. I have no hesitation to bring this application to be determined by your committee. The starting point for me is our policies CS2 and EV1. May I take this opportunity just to remind members, CS2 includes new development should respect and enhance the character of the area, having regard to scale, density, mass height, and the policy also requires new development to protect the amenity of people who live and work nearby. Policy EV1 design seeks to ensure a high standard of design for development which respects and enhances the local environment. Is the design layout, scale, mass, and compatible with the local locality. It is acknowledged in the officer report number 1 to 9 on Windmill Rise are single-storey dwellings, generally set back from each other in the street scene and with relative uniform appearance in terms of their front gable and use of materials. The report fails to point out that number 13 on the other side of the application site is also a single-storey bungalow, like the properties 1 to 9. In my view, this proposed development in this prominent corner position when looking to the east would certainly be incongruous to the traditional single-storey dwellings on the side of Windmill Rise. This would certainly not respect the character of this part of the street scene, and would not accord with policy CS2 and EV1 when viewed from an eastward direction. Turning to the impact on amenity, loss of light and privacy, by the very nature of the design and the amount of glazing proposed, in my view, this will have a disproportionate effect on adjacent neighbours. It is already acknowledged in the officer's report that the existing dwelling is such that it already conflicts with the 45-degree angle of light rule. The question must be how an application can be approved when it's subject to extra height. I also note reference that the block plan dated 7th of September, in my view, is incorrect. I believe the dwelling to be closer to number 9 because it is closer to the curtilage than shown on the block plan. Turning to the proposed garage, height 4 meters. Officer report states the planning also shows a slight repositioning of a single garage. In my view, this is not the way a slight repositioning of the current garage and will have serious consequences for the occupiers of number 13. The new proposed garage will move back to a position close to the only outside source of light to the main habitable room. This will now be so close to one external window to the living room, it will be, in my opinion, certainly not meet the criteria of CS2. I understand the developer could erect a garage lower in height, 2.5 meters, under permitted development rights, but this is not before you tonight. Therefore, this should be determined on the merits of the proposed application. In summary, this proposal does not fit with the street scene as viewed eastwards. This part of the side of Windmill Rise is traditional bungalows. This proposal on the most prominent corner of the site is totally out of step with the street scene. The curtilage is incorrect drawing between number 9 and number 11 on block plan, in my view. This may affect the angle of light rule and amenity of occupiers of number 9. This is not a slight reposition of the garage. It will have a massive impact on the natural light into the main habitable room of number 13. Members, how would you react to a 4-meter high garage close to your living room window? We should be protecting the amenity of this elderly occupiers of number 13. I do worry about the effect of the proposed garage on the occupants of number 13. Even a 2.5 high permitted development would be better than a proposed, the proposal. Hopefully the developers would adjust this after hearing the problems this would cause the elderly residents of number 13. It also says that there seems to be no consultation between the developer and the affected residents. Members, with the amount of proposed windows, it is inevitable that some privacy and amenity issues will occur. Members, I hope I have given you enough information to refuse this application as it conflicts with policies CS2, EV1 and H17. Just interested to know how note 4 can be enforced on the actual meeting minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Snart. Karen, would you like to come back on the points raised, please?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair. I'm first of all looking at some of the points that residents raised. They did query the plans, and I have, while the proceedings have been going on, I have double checked that those plans are correct, and they are. My only thought is that perhaps residents are looking at an earlier version that did have larger windows that's been superseded. The most recent version is revision C, which is the version that's on the slide, and more importantly, the version that was considered by the case officer that looked at the application. Turning to the various points that were made about privacy, loss of light, I understand that these are obviously emotive issues. However, it is important that members bear in mind that the proposal as shown does meet with our own supplementary guidance with regard to light and privacy and so forth. Councillor Snart mentioned the design being in context with the area, and it is indeed, its design is a subjective matter. I would, as the officer report points out, this particular building is at a point where there is a visual break, but as was pointed out, there is also a bungalow, another bungalow as you turn the corner. That's something that obviously members need to decide, and it's within their gift to make that judgment as to whether they feel that the design is in keeping with the area. A point that was made about the 45-degree rule already being breached by the existing dwelling. Although, and I've just looked at the report again, that's not actually correct in that it isn't both 45-degree tests that are breached, it's only on one plane. So the current dwelling and the proposal wouldn't lead to a material loss of light to the back of number 9. And the garage, all I would say to the garage is a couple of reminders. Yes, a garage that's up to 2.5 meters high could be put in using permitted development rights. And as was pointed out by residents and Councillor Snart, this is in excess of that. But I would just add that it nevertheless does meet with the guidelines in the SPD for measuring light, daylight and sunlight, and the impact that would have on adjacent dwellings. The window that's at the side on number 13 is a high level window. So obviously any measurement that you would take to that window would be taken at a higher level. And also it's important to remember that is a north facing window already. So the very nature of it, it doesn't provide a great deal of light, and the repositioned garage wouldn't impede on that light to any big degree in terms of sort of a material increase. I'd also like to just add that the ridge height of the garage is 4 meters, but the eaves height, as set out in the report, remains much the same as the existing garage, albeit closer, which is absolutely as the report sets out. I hope I've addressed everything there, but if you want to come back to me if there's anything I've missed.
Right, thank you, Karen. As things stand, there's no hands up at all. Oh, yes, there is one now. Dan Grimley, Councillor Grimley, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, my opinion of this is that it is incongruous in terms of design from what I can see at the moment. I want to listen to what the other councillors have to say on this, but at the moment I'm leaning towards, well, that I do feel that it is incongruous.
Thank you, Councillor Grimley. At the moment, I'm still showing nobody else indicating to speak. Can I invite anybody else to join in? Councillor Joan Tassel, do you want to join in now?
Well, from what I've seen and knowing that the area, what it is, I think this is going to be rather over a dominant building compared to the type of bungalows that they are. And I'm just wondering why they need a garage so high. I mean, I've got a 4x4 car, which is quite high, and it will go into a normal garage. Why do they need one so high? Could it, I mean, I feel that it's just too much for the site. There's other bungalows very close to it. The garage that's going to be built looks as if it is going to take light out of the other person's property. I wouldn't be able to vote for this, I'm afraid.
Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Tassel. At the moment, I'm still showing nobody else indicating to speak. Can I invite somebody else to come in?
Councillor Campbell is wishing to speak.
Yes, thank you. I've just noticed. Councillor Campbell, would you like to join us?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm not very happy at all. It does seem rather a change of over dominance, and it's not in keeping with the street scene. And I'm, you know, to hear the neighbours how unhappy they're going to be, and the quality of life that's going to be ruined. I can't really vote for it, I'm afraid. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sandy Forrest.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I have to say I agree with the people who have spoken, the councillors who have spoken so far. Excuse me. I think this is it's an overdevelopment of the site. I think it's incongruous within the street scene, and I would be prepared to propose that we reject officer's recommendation and don't allow this to go through.
Can I second that, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, thank you for that proposal. Sorry, I missed the seconder. Who's the seconder, please?
Joan Tassel, Councillor Tassel.
Okay. Thank you for that. Nobody else. Oh, now I've got Councillor Bolton wishing to speak.
Am I muted? No. I would like to support everything that's been said already. And in fact, if the seconder had not come in then, I was going to second that we should refuse permission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm not actually showing anybody else wanting to speak at the moment. Oh, sorry, I've got Jacqueline Jackson wishing to join us. Jacqueline?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to bring members back round to see if we can try and clarify the reasons for their proposition, supporting it with policy, which is what we need to do. So if the proposer, Councillor Forrest, is minded, I would recommend that you delegate the wording of the refusal back to officers, but we clarify exactly what the reasons are and what your concerns are. So what I'm getting from the conversation is that members are concerned about design. They don't think that the proposed design is appropriate. They think it's an overdevelopment of the site, and because of its scale and its design details, and it would appear incongruous given the existing properties in the street, and it would be out of character. Therefore, I would suggest to members that they are arguing it would be contrary to policies CS2 of the core strategy, EV1 of the local plan, and EV17 of the local plan. So that's a design reason. Now, some members, but not all members, have also mentioned amenity of neighbours. Now, that's a different issue, and you do have to think about things very carefully, because obviously officers have given you some very clear advice, especially when it comes to the SPD and how we assess amenity as part of the SPD. So I just need a bit of thought to say whether what I've said has encapsulated it or whether it's missing something.
Well, Karen wants to rejoin us, but before she does, I think you summarised that fairly well. I have to say, you know, I think it's not the job of the chair necessarily to lead the meeting. I've listened to what other people have said, and I would agree with everything that's been said so far. I'm going to pass you back now to Karen, if you'd like to come back in, Karen.
Hi, I didn't take my hand down, although I was going to make much the same point as Jacqueline's just made. But I've left it up because she did refer to policy EV17 and it should be H17. And I just wanted to make sure that that was recorded as one of the policies that you would be saying it was contrary to. Sorry.
Yes, sorry,
Yeah,
my mistake. That is the policy I meant.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. Well, nobody else is indicating to speak, so I'm going to put it to the vote. Are we clear what we're voting for? Jacqueline, would you like to come back in?
Yeah, and I think Catherine does as well. We just need the proposer to clarify if I've covered everything.
Councillor Forrest, would you like to come back on that?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine, Councillor
Thank
Forrest.
you. Yes, I'm very grateful for what Ms Jackson has said, and for Ms Brightman as well. She made things very clear. For myself, it is the overdevelopment of the site, and it's the incongruity in the street scene. I know other councillors have mentioned the impact of the amenity of the neighbours. I don't feel qualified to comment on that, although I feel desperately, I have a lot of sympathy for them, but I am very happy to take advice from our officers on that point.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tassell, do you want to come back?
Yeah, the thing that I am really concerned about is the garage. It's been brought so close to the neighbours' boundary that I feel it's infringing on their rights because it's so high. And I don't know what we would put that under, but I do feel that it's over dominant for them as well, being so close to the fence and the height of it for a garage. But I don't know what we could put it under, but I do think it's interfering with their human rights, really, because it's right up to their house.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Tassell, for that. It was interesting that the speaker, who was one of the objectors, was saying that she felt that there was no actual right to light. Well, actually, that's not what I believe to be the case. People do have a right to light. And I'd just ask Jacqueline Jackson to come in and just clarify that point.
Thank you, Chair. I think that there's two different elements here. There's a private right to light issue, and sometimes you do and don't have them over boundaries. That's a legal issue that we don't get involved in. What our policy does say, though, if I take members to it, bear with me whilst I just get the right page, is that we do consider loss of light as part of the amenity. So in terms of a policy CS17, which is specifically for extensions, we say that we'll consider whether the proposal is detrimental to the amenity of occupiers by nearby properties by reason of overshadowing, which is sunlight, which, as we've heard, it's due north of that window, so there wouldn't be any overshadowing as such. Dominance, so that's something you could consider, or substantial loss of light, and we use the 45-degree rule to consider whether there's substantial loss of light, but also what could be built and if the impact's any worse. So that's the terms which you've been advised on. Obviously, the design of the garage could be enrolled into the general design reason for refusal that you've already got, but I think members do have to agree between them whether they consider there is an immediacy issue with regards to that garage that would justify a reason for refusal based on the wording of that policy.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Fryer's got a hand up, but I'd just like to go back to Councillor Forrest just quickly to ask her about the garage and see if she wants to comment further on that.
Well, it is certainly very large. Could I ask Ms. Jackson? Jackie gave a very comprehensive reply now. She mentioned 3 things with regard to light. Could I ask her to repeat what the second one is, please?
Yeah, so I was just reading directly from policy H17, and it wasn't specifically regarding light, it's about how we assess amenity. So we say that we would look whether it's detrimental to amenity of occupiers of neighbouring properties by reason of overshadowing, dominance, or substantial loss of light. And what I'm trying to do here is really be clear with members that it's very clear that the proposition at the moment includes a design reason for refusal and its impact within the street scene. What we also need to be clear on is if members are including an amenity, so a second reason for refusal. Now that's more difficult given the advice, but members need to grapple with that and make a decision between them on whether there's that second reason is going to be added to the proposition.
May I come back, please?
Yes,
Chair?
I was going to ask you to come back
Thank
in on
you.
that, Councillor Forrest.
Yes, I think our difficulty there would be defining what we meant by substantial. I mean, I would take Councillor Tassel's advice, but I think we have enough to go on with regard to the garage in terms of dominance and height and size. I think if we sort of start, problem with issues about light are they're so technical that I think we would have difficulty. And my opinion is we have enough with what we have.
Can I? Ian, you're muted.
Sorry, Councillor Pryor, you're next.
Well, all I was going to say was I think it's encompassed in the advice we've been given, CS2 EV1 H17. We don't need, we are recommending refusal, so therefore we don't need to go. But I think also, isn't there something to do with scale? Didn't someone mention that you could, there was a thing with scale, but I tend to agree with Councillor Forrest that we have good strong reasons for refusal, and I don't think we have to go any further into detail.
Yes, just to clarify, Chair, what I was reading then was just the sections of the policy that relate to amenity. There's obviously design and other things, and we've already discussed that. I'm trying to ascertain where the proposer sits on amenity. I'd just like to point out to Chair as well that Ms Brightman also wants to give some officer advice. So if I can point out that she's got a hand up.
Okay, yes, thank you. We've got 2 speakers left. We've got Karen Brightman and Councillor Tassell. Unless anybody's got anything substantial or different to add to this debate, I'm going to draw a line under that. So we can take you first, Karen, and then it'll be Councillor Joan Tassell.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chair. It was just to give members some reassurance, really, on the amenity issue, and to point out that the officers have used our own SPD, which sets out the standards and the tests that we would use as guidance in applying those amenity-based policies, and that we have looked at light, and that meets both the 45-degree and the 25-degree tests that we would apply for daylight, because, as Jacqueline's already pointed out, the building is due north. There's no harm in terms of sunlight. In terms of dominance, it meets with what's set out in the SPD, and because it's a garage, there isn't an issue with privacy. So it was just to provide members with some comfort, really, along those lines, and to to make it clear that we had assessed those and that they weren't missing something by not putting an amenity reason for refusal on as well. And in fact, putting one on might be very difficult because we would have to say that it wasn't meeting with our SPD and say why. And I think we may struggle to do that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And lastly, Councillor Tassell, the seconder.
Yes, I'm quite happy to go with what Councillor Sandy Forrest proposed, and that is to take the amenity off of the reasons for refusal.
Okay, thank you. Right, well, we have a proposal and we have a seconder. It's been proposed by Councillor Forrest and seconded by Councillor Tassell that we go against officer's recommendation, citing CS2, EV1 and H17. So unless any officer wants to come back to me and add anything more to that, we're going to go to the vote.
There's some legal.
So, Councillor Bent. Thank you. So it was just to add to Councillor Bentley that there was also to delegate authority to officers to finish the exact wording of the reason for refusal.
Councillor Bentley, you're muted.
Sorry, I do apologise. So, Councillor Bolton, are you for, against, or abstain? I can't hear you.
I'm in favour of refusal.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Campsall.
Yes, Chair, I'm in favour of refusal as well.
Councillor Capleton.
Chair, I'm against refusal.
Against refusal. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Charles.
Hello, Chair. In favour of the refusal.
Thank you. Councillor Forrest.
Thank you, Chair. I am
in favour of refusal.
I'm in favour of refusal. Yeah, I'm against officer's recommendation. I don't know how you want to put it.
Okay, thank you. We got there. Councillor Grimley.
Thank you, Chair. I'm in favour of the refusal.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe.
It's very confusing, Chair, but I'm for the proposal, which was against officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Ransom.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually for the proposal and it's against recommendation, so I'm for the refusal.
So you're for the refusal? Okay, yeah. Thank you. Councillor Savage.
I'm for the refusal, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Tassell.
I'm against the officer's recommendation.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Ward.
For the proposal, Chair.
And Councillor Fryer. So did you want to come back? Oh, did I miss you?
Yet.
Sorry, Councillor Fryer, sorry.
I was for the proposal.
Okay, thank you. So I make that 12 against officer's recommendation and 1 for. Can I just ask Karen?
Sorry, Councillor Bentley.
Oh, sorry, I need to vote myself. So sorry, I'm for the proposal. So I make that 12 against officer's recommendation and 1 for. Can I just ask Catherine to confer?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Bentley. I agree. It was 12 votes for the proposal, which was to go against officer's recommendation and refuse it for the reasons given, with delegated authority back to the officers to finalise the reason for refusal, and 1 vote against that vote.
Okay, thank you very much. We've now been going for just over 2 hours, and I'm going to suggest that we have a quick 5-minute comfort break. So we'll resume at 11 minutes past 7.
Can you remind everybody to turn off videos?
Yes, I'm as the host, I'm going to mute everybody now. So thank you.
Okay, thanks very much.
Slides up to say we're having a short adjournment.
Super. So we'll see everybody back at in 5 minutes at 11 minutes past 7. Okay, hello everybody. We've still got one or two still left to join us, so I'm just going to extend that another couple of minutes. Can anybody hear me, or are we silent?
I can hear you, Chair.
I
What
can hear
about
you,
Chair?
Chair.
I can hear you.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Okay, we're still waiting for a few still to join us. Hopefully they'll be with us shortly. Next time I'll make it 10 minutes. Councillor Forrest, is that you I can hear? Do you want to turn your video on?
There we are.
Thank you very much. So we're still waiting for a couple more to come back to us.
Well, it's taking them a long time to make a cup of tea.
Yeah, I'll just say next time I'm going to make it 10 minutes rather than 5.
You don't think they could have sneaked off down the pub, do you?
Well, I'm beginning to wonder. At least it's still before 10 p.m.
Does it start tonight?
I'm not sure, actually.
For clarification, it does.
There's a
Sound
man
like
who
an
knows.
unhappy man.
Is that why I look so depressed, Mark?
Chair, if I can, we are live on YouTube, so we just need to just do a roll call, please, just to make sure we've got everybody in attendance of the second part.
Yep.
of the meeting.
Okay. I'm
Thank
quite
you.
happy to do a roll call. Obviously starting with myself in alphabetical order, so I'm here. So, Councillor Bolton.
I'm present and can hear and see the proceedings.
Councillor Campbell.
Yes, Chair, I'm here as well. I can see and hear everything.
Councillor Capleton,
Yes, I'm here. I can see and hear everything.
Councillor Charles,
Yes, I can confirm that I can see and hear everything.
Councillor Forrest,
Present and correct, sir. I can see and hear the proceedings.
thank you. Councillor Fryer,
I'm here and I can see and hear the proceedings.
Councillor Grimley, Councillor Grimley,
Sorry about that. It went back on mute. Yeah, I can see and hear the proceedings.
yeah, thank you. Councillor Lowe,
Thank you, Chair. I confirm I can see and hear the proceedings.
Councillor Ransom,
Thank you, Chair. I can hear and see the proceedings.
Councillor Savage,
I confirm I can hear and both see and hear the proceedings.
thank you. Councillor Tassell,
Confirm I'm here and I can hear and see the proceedings. Thank you.
thank you. Councillor Ward,
Yes, Chair, I'm here and I can see and hear the proceedings.
okay, if we can do a roll call of the officers. I can see most of you, but I can't see Matt Goodyear or Nadia. Oh, Matt Goodyear's just come back on, so's Nadia. Okay, I think we're complete, so we'll press on. So we're going to go on to item 3. Item 3 is P/19/0721/2 Melton Road, Syston. This is the Aldi application. I'm not too sure which officer is presenting it, so whichever one of you is presenting it, if you'd like to make a start, please.
Can we have the presentation, please? Thank you, Nadia. Right, so item 3 tonight is the hybrid application relating to the Aldi store at 1169 Melton Road, Syston. The application is called to Plans Committee at the request of the Head of Planning and Regeneration, as ward councillors have declared personal interest in the development, and the application is of wider public interest. So the proposal, as I say, is a hybrid application, as it's a full planning application for extensions to the existing supermarket, including the creation of additional car parking, associated landscaping, to include the demolition of industrial buildings at number 33 Albert Street, which are currently occupied by Syston Doors. The proposal also includes an outline planning application with all matters reserved for future consideration in relation to the erection of 6 residential units on land at Albert Street, which covers the remainder of the application site area. Next slide, please. So this is the site, which is located on the eastern side of Melton Road, with the manufacturing premises located on the corner of Albert Street and Victoria Street to the south. The existing store is served by 60 car park spaces, and the store includes its own warehousing space, plant room, staff welfare facilities and a loading bay located in the centre of the application site, represented by the rectangular cutout section, if you can make that out. To the east of that is currently enclosed overflow car parking, with the Syston Doors buildings to the right, as shown on the plan, and extending south to Albert Street. Next slide, please. So this is the existing store layout, with the loading bay positioned just underneath the Aldi car park label on the image. You can see the existing access off Melton Road, the current L shape of the car parking area, and also the roofs of the Syston Doors buildings to the right hand side, which is to be demolished. Next slide, please. These are photos of the existing store. The top left shows the existing parking and the store entrance close to Melton Road. The top centre photo shows the eastern elevation where the larger extension is proposed, and you can see the existing location of external plant and equipment. The top right hand photo shows the existing overspill parking looking south towards Albert Street. The bottom left is looking eastwards across the car park towards some of the buildings to be demolished. And the final photo is the western elevation of the building fronting Melton Road, where a smaller extension is also to take place. Next slide, please. So this is the existing site layout plan. Next slide, please. And this is the proposed site plan. We can see the small extension to the western side fronting Melton Road. The larger hatched area to the centre of the site is where the extension to the store is proposed. Just to the south of this is a new loading bay with the enclosed plant to the end of the resultant building, just to the bottom of the hatched area. A reconfigured car parking, landscaping, additional lighting columns would provide a total of 119 car park spaces, including 6 parent and 7 wheelchair accessible spaces to the northern side of the building, close to the existing store entrance. The existing access is to remain unaltered with the vehicular access to Melton Road. To the south, you can see the residential element of the scheme, and although this shows a possible 6 dwellings, this is an indicative layout only and not for consideration today, but it shows how a residential development might be achieved on the site. You can clearly see that all the current manufacturing buildings with Syston doors would be cleared away, with new boundary treatments to Victoria Street proposed, and we'll come on to this on the next slide, please. So these are photos of Albert Street. The top left shows Albert Street looking east towards Victoria Street. The top middle photo shows the existing boundary wall to Syston doors, where it adjoins number 23 Albert Street. And the top right pans across the yard and buildings to be demolished. More of the Syston doors buildings are in the photo to the bottom left. The centre bottom is the elevation of the buildings to Victoria Street, where much of the brickwork of this elevation is to be retained as a new boundary wall to the enlarged car park. And the last photo shows more of the industrial type of buildings on the site to be demolished. Next slide, please. So these are the proposed elevations. The top shows the northern elevation. You can see the store entrance to the right-hand side with the proposed smaller extension which fronts Melton Road. And to the very left of the that elevation, you'll see the extent of the main addition to the building as indicated on the plan. So the bar underneath the elevation shows the extent of the 25-metre long extension. You can see that the style of the extension is very much in keeping with the existing building, with a continuation of the profiled roof line and the use of matching materials and detailing. In the middle is the proposed loading bay, which is now on the side of the building, with new plant and equipment also located on the end, as you can see. The bottom plan is of the proposed rear elevation, which backs onto Albert Street properties, and the extent of the additional building is located again with the bar just underneath the elevation on the right-hand side. You can see that the levels within the new loading bay mean that lorries will reverse down a slight ramp, as indicated by the dotted line to the right-hand side of the plan. And it's along this boundary that the acoustic fence is proposed, and I'll show you that on the next slide, please. So this slide shows new proposed boundary fencing to match the style of the existing fencing around the car park, which are black painted metal railings. It also shows the retained elements of the Victoria Street buildings, including the bricked up windows, The proposal also includes an acoustic fence along the southern boundary of the site with Albert Street to shield and reduce noise emissions from the activities associated with the proposed loading bay and the operation of plant and equipment, and also the use of the car park and area. Next slide, please. So the key considerations is the principle of the development. In terms of the proposed retail extensions, the site is well related to Syston District Centre. Policy CS9 of the core strategy aims to protect and support the vitality of town centres, and as set out in the report, officers consider that although the site lies just outside the district centre as defined in the Borough of Charnwood local plan, the map that accompanies that document and the associated policy CA8 is quite aged now, and the site should, officers consider, be treated as a functional part of the district centre of Syston. As such, the expansion of a retail store within the district centre is considered to be acceptable in principle and in line with policy CS9 of the core strategy. In terms of the residential element of the proposal, Syston is defined as in the settlement hierarchy as a service centre with a good range of services and facilities and good transport links to meet the day-to-day needs of its residents. So Syston is considered to be an appropriate location for new housing, and the proposed 6 units of accommodation is considered to be small scale and within the limits of Syston, and in accordance with policy CS1. As such, it's the residential element is acceptable in principle. We also need to consider the loss of the current employment land. As we've seen, it would involve the proposal would involve the demolition of existing manufacturing premises and the loss of employment land from a primary employment area as defined in policy E7 of the Borough of Charnwood local plan. As set out on page 57 of the agenda, the policy is more than 5 years old and it's not considered to be entirely consistent with the NPPF, which should also be read in conjunction with policy CS6, which seeks to provide opportunities for manufacturing businesses to develop or expand or relocate. So the NPPF makes it clear that planning decisions need to reflect changes in the demand for land, and that local planning authorities should take a positive approach to proposals for alternative development now, provided those proposals don't undermine the vitality and viability of that town centre. In this case, it is considered that there are no longer any policies that protect the loss of existing employment sites, and that the proposal will generate positive economic and social benefits as set out more fully in your agenda. And it's considered that the loss of the older employment site would not be at odds with the most relevant and up-to-date policies relating to employment land, and therefore there's no objection to the loss of that employment use. In terms of design, policy CS2 calls for new development to be of high quality design that's in context with its surroundings. As we've seen from the slides, the proposed store extension will follow the form and materials of the existing building, with a freestanding glazed canopy to be installed to provide a sheltered link between the store entrance and the extended landscape car parking. So overall, it's considered the scale and appearance of the extensions are appropriate. And then in terms of the design of the housing, as has been explained, this is an outline application only, and there are no details yet of the design to be considered at this stage. But given the small scale nature of the site, and the current mix of housing types on Albert Street, it's considered that a suitable design could be submitted in the future. So in conclusion, it's considered that the proposal would accord with policy CS2 and EV1 in terms of the design. Members' attention is drawn to an additional representation which has been received by the department since the publication of the extras report. This comes from a Syston resident who comments on the toilet and changing facilities within the store, fire escape routes, and how the dedicated, accessible and parent car parking spaces will be managed to ensure that they're not misused. Section 149 of the Equalities Act places a statutory duty on public authorities in the exercise of their functions to have due regard to the need to eliminate discrimination and advance equality. So in terms of the proposal and addressing this extra representation, the extension is partly sought to improve circulation space for all customers within the store. The report sets out that aisle widths are particularly narrow and there's difficulties in navigating aisles. It also increases the amount of dedicated spaces reserved for wheelchair users and parents, and it improves customer toilets facilities for everyone. It's therefore concluded that there's nothing inherent within the design that would disadvantage any group. And in fact, the proposal would provide an accessible toilet with baby change facilities where currently none exists. So in this way, it's considered that the proposal would meet the requirements of the Equality Act. In terms of ecology, the impact on ecology has been assessed and it's set out on pages 58 of the agenda. The application was accompanied by an ecological report which made recommendations to carry out further survey work, and this has now been completed. The final findings are set out and updated in your extras report, and it's considered that with the already secured proposed landscaping, additional conditions requiring the submission and implementation of a scheme of back boxes and to control the design of external lighting should be sufficient to comply with policy CS13 and the requirements of the NPPF. So in terms of residential amenity, both the retail and the residential elements of the scheme have been assessed in some detail as set out in the officer's report. The effects on light, privacy, potential harms arising from odour, light nuisance, construction disturbance and operational noise have all been considered. Officers have taken advice from the Council's Environmental Health Service and consider that the scheme is so designed that any identified harms can be ameliorated through the imposition of the conditions, including the need to secure a construction traffic management plan, noise attenuation fencing to be provided, limiting hours on delivery, dispatches and waste collections, and noise limits on external plant. These requirements are reflected in the conditions proposed to be attached in the event planning permission is granted this evening. And these are considered to be sufficient to ensure the development accords with policies CS2 and EV1, which seek to protect the amenities of people who live and work nearby. Subsequent to the publication of the agenda and the extras report, the department's received a request from the applicant to vary the suggested condition 12 so that on Sundays the store be allowed to operate deliveries and waste collections for an extra hour in the morning, i.e. from 7 in the morning on Sundays, and for an hour later until 8 p.m. in the evening. However, officers have sought and obtained the informal opinion of environmental health officers who've confirmed that the hours in the recommended condition 12 relating to those Sunday activities are already considered to be generous and the minimum needed to ensure the amenity of neighbours is protected. So I thought I'd just include that and update you on that. In terms of highways and car parking, the site is considered to be a sustainable one in transport terms, with good access to public transport links, and is within easy walking or cycling distance of other shops and services within the town centre. Submitted transport assessment and the revised site layout plan, which slightly modified the number of accessible car parking spaces, is acceptable to the local highway authority, and both the retail and residential elements are acceptable in highway terms. The application was accompanied by a travel plan, which does require some refinement, and this is called for by recommended condition 6. But overall, it's considered that the proposal accords with policy TR18, the Leicestershire Highways Design Guide, and the requirements of the NPPF. Landscaping, the proposal includes areas of new tree and shrub planting, and the details to give precise specifications for those is included as condition 10, with implementation as condition 11. So in conclusion, it's considered that the retail and residential elements of this hybrid application are acceptable in principle, acceptable in highway safety, ecological and amenity terms, and would accord with the policies and guidance set out in the report. It's further considered that where harms have been identified, these could be mitigated satisfactorily by the imposition of the recommended conditions, and that there are no tenable reasons to support refusal of planning permission. It's therefore recommended that planning permission is granted, as set out in the officer report and supplemented by the extras report. I've just had a notification that Catherine would like to speak. She's recommending a tweak to condition 2, if you would allow her to speak, Chair.
Yes, thank you for that, Deborah. If you'd like to come in, Catherine, please, at this time.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just in the interim, we'll just be looking at the conditions set out in the report, and I just wanted to recommend with to Ms. Liggins whether we want to relook at the condition 2. I think I think there's a typo in the first line in that I think it should be read the final application for approval of reserved matters shall be made within 3 years of the date of the permission. Otherwise, there was no time limit to the submission of reserved matters, which would normally be imposed. And the second part, following on, and the development to be begun not later than 2 years from the approval of the last of the reserved matters. That's duplicating the time limit we've already got in condition 1. So it suggests either needs to be deleted for clarity, or if we're wanting a deadline on the imposition of reserved matters, I think it should read that the development permitted by each reserved matter application shall be begun not later than 2 years from the date of approval of that reserved matters. Sorry,
Okay.
I don't know if that's picked up, and I don't know whether, Debbie, if you've got a view on that. I'm sorry, it's come to you quite quickly. I think the first bit that it's final is, I think that's just a typo, but then the second part of that, whether we're wanting to put a time limit on implementation of each reserved matters, or whether we don't require that at all, and we're happy with just general time limit we've got in condition 1 for the development as a whole to be commenced, or whether we want the outline part commenced within a certain time. I think Jackie wants to come in on that too, so.
Yeah, Chair, I'll just confirm, because I'm the one that has spoke to Catherine about this, and obviously Debbie is just hearing it after the presentation. I think Catherine is right. It should be the final application for the approval of reserved matters. So if members are minded to grant planning permission, I would recommend that the proposer includes in their recommendation to change that to the final application. I don't think there needs to be the second part of the condition because it's already been covered in condition 1. So condition 2 I would recommend is amended to say the final application for the approval of reserved matters shall be made within 3 years of the date of this permission. But if members are worried, what they can do is just delegate delegate back to officers to look at that condition to make sure it works legally, and we can have that conversation with Catherine outside of committee. You're on mute, Councillor.
Oh, apologies again. We're going to move to the speakers on this. First, it'll be the objectors who are sharing the 5 minutes, and the speakers are Alison Cook and Kim. Alison Cook and Kim, are you available?
Chair, I'm just having a technical problem. I'm going to, Alison Cook has actually disappeared out of the, so I'm going to allow Kim to speak.
Okay, if Alison Cook isn't going to return, I would suggest that Kim has 5 minutes if she needs it.
Yeah.
Chair, we will try and see if there's been a technical issue with the other speaker whilst Kim speaks.
In that case, then, Kim, I'll limit you to 2.5 minutes in the hope that Alison Cook can sort out the technical issues and follow on after yourself.
Okay, not a problem. Hi, everyone. So Audi have agreed to certain measures in their proposal. Audi also agreed to measures when they first developed the site. However, these measures are already being breached. Deliveries are made outside of permitted hours. Residents have video footage of deliveries being made after midnight and in the early hours of the morning. This interrupts local residents and is a frequent occurrence. Expanding the store will result in more frequent deliveries due to the predicted increased footfall at the store. I note that audio equipment has recorded the noise and have assessed that this falls below permitted noise levels. I also note that this audio equipment was not placed within the boundary of the residents most affected by this development. This noise will continue long after any building work has been completed at the expense of residents nearby. These are articulated refrigerated lorries less than 15 metres away from people's homes at ridiculous times of day and night. This will move even closer to residents' homes. The plant is also directly behind residential properties and is a noise nuisance. Customers using the car park also cause noise with car doors slamming, engines running and trolleys being used. Syston is subject to environmental legislation, which includes monitoring of emissions and air pollution. I'm led to believe that the level of air pollution in Syston is already above the permitted level. Expanding the car park at Audi will further this pollution and increase traffic in the town. The proposed expansion of Audi is not future-proof and is an overdevelopment that is not necessary. Audi is trialling click and collect and home delivery options for customers. This is likely to be a success and is therefore likely to be implemented across Audi stores. It is all well and good having an additional 53 car parking spaces, but what use are these for if Audi deliver your shopping to your door or you simply click and collect your shopping? The goalposts are continually changing. Audi have previously stated that building work will take place between certain hours to avoid causing a noise nuisance. However, it has now been suggested that due to COVID, building regulations now allow building work to be completed outside of the normal permitted building hours. Building work would therefore be allowed to start and finish in line with the store's opening times. Building work could therefore take place until 10 o'clock at night. Local residents' properties will also be overshadowed, our privacy will be invaded, we will lose light and our properties will lose value. We will be dominated by grey mass in our gardens. The loading bay and bin areas directly behind residents' gardens.
Time is up, please. Time is up, sorry. Chair, I understand that the other speaker has now arrived, Alison Cook. So would you like me to bring her into the
Yes,
meeting?
please, Karen. That'd be great. Thank you.
Hello. Hello, many thanks for allowing me the opportunity to speak to you this evening to explain why I sincerely and wholeheartedly support this application for a proposed extension of the Aldi store in Syston. My name is Alison Cook and I'm one of the directors at Syston Doors. Syston Doors is a family business which has been in existence for 100 years, and my two brothers and I are the third generation who have managed the company. Aside from the wider benefits for the local community, we need this scheme to go through to safeguard our future. It will enable our business to relocate to a smaller and more modern unit within the borough of Charnwood and allow us to keep all of our employees' jobs safe. With the growing demands of our business, we are finding that we are becoming limited as to what we can do, and delivery and access has proved increasingly difficult via Albert Street. Industrial doors are getting bigger and this requires larger lorries to transport them. These bigger lorries are unable to access our yard and must offload onto Albert Street. This causes an obstruction that holds up the residents and other businesses, causing subsequent frustration. Our intention is that the new premises will have better access, with large vehicles being able to access the yard and turn around, where currently the turning circle isn't large enough. Aside from the benefits to Syston Doors, this is a well-used Aldi store and the demand is there for an extension to be granted. Aldi is already a significant local employer and the extension will help to support additional jobs at the store as well through the construction process. This is something that members have to consider during these difficult times. The result of this determination will have a major impact on how Syston Doors trades and our ability to protect jobs, especially as we recover from the challenges of COVID-19. I would ask members to consider this alongside the benefits that the scheme will bring to Aldi shoppers. I have been impressed by the way Aldi have approached issues such as highways and the mitigating actions taken. As I understand from the plans, additional parking will be available and this will restrict any problems on Albert Street. I would therefore ask you as councillors, for me and the community who fervently want to see this application approved, to uphold the officer's recommendation and approve this application. Again, thank you for your time and this opportunity.
Thank you. And now I'd like to call the agent, Robin Williams.
Chairman, councillors, thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. I'm Robin Williams, Regional Property Director for Aldi Stores Limited. The Aldi store in Syston District Centre is now nearly 15 years old, and in certain key respects it fails to meet the quality standards now being achieved in our newest stores. The retail floor space is too small to properly accommodate and display the enlarged standardised product range now sold in each of our stores. The available car parking provision is deficient, with congestion happening at peak shopping periods. The proposed extension will allow us to bring the store size, the quality of the internal shopping environment, and car parking facilities up to the standards now expected by our store customers. This will in turn help to future-proof the viability of an important attractor to the district centre. In addition, the retention of existing custom and new trade generated by the extended store should lead to up to 10 new jobs being created. The proposed development also includes the provision of new housing, complementing the existing residential character on Albert Street. It is important to note that at this stage, only the principle of the housing use is being considered. Detailed matters relating to design and layout will be determined at reserved matters stage when Aldi have sold the site to a specialist housing developer. While it is important to note that there is no policy in the development plan that allows the planning authority to protect existing employment land and premises, we understand there could be concern for the future of Syston Doors factory, which has operated here for many years. However, as the representative of Syston Doors confirmed just a minute ago, the company is intending to relocate to alternative premises elsewhere within the borough, so that existing employment within that business will be retained. Moreover, the relocation of the industrial use from this site and the removal of associated commercial traffic along Albert Street will improve local residential amenity. As a result, the proposed Aldi development will have a net increase in local employment opportunities. It will also make a contribution to the supply of relatively affordable housing in a location where future residents have excellent access on foot to a high-quality food store and a successful local shopping centre. On the point of delivery hours, there is currently no planning restriction in place. This extension would result in restrictions being put in place Therefore, it would be a significant improvement for the local residents. Investment by retailers in existing shopping centres is fully in accord with the aims of planning policy, and it should be particularly welcomed in these troubled times, which have seen a huge surge in shopping online and an enforced massive decline in town centre footfall. If approved, Aldi's proposals will make a significant positive difference to the future of Syston District Centre. Overall, the Aldi proposal is a sustainable development offering substantial benefits for local people. Government policy requires that such development be permitted unless there is any overriding reason not to do so. In this case, it is clear that the benefits of the proposal far outweigh any disadvantages. I would therefore respectfully urge you to uphold the officer's recommendation and permit this application. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And lastly, I'd like to call Councillor Gerard, who's speaking on behalf of the ward councillors.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Gerard, if you'd like to start.
Thank you. I am reading Councillor Barclay's report. This is his words and not mine. Overlooking the loss of privacy, the proposed extension to Aldi is directly behind residents of Albert Street Gardens, resulting in a lack of privacy as the unloading bay is adjacent to their garden. The rear of some properties can be seen from the current car park, and this lack of privacy will be worsened by the proposed extension to both the building and the car parking. Loss of daylight, sunlight, or overshadowing. The proposed extension will result in overshadowing some properties, resulting in significant loss of daylight. I do not know how the loss of views cannot be considered to be a significant factor. It is significant, and this needs to be considered. Being forced to see a huge grey building is not acceptable, and the gardens in the shadow is also unacceptable. For people who suffer from seasonal affective disorder, this loss of daylight is significant and impacts on mental health. Scale and dominance. The proposed extension will dominate several properties. It will put houses in shadow all day, every day. This will be increasing in heating and electricity bills. Layout and density of buildings. The proposed positioning of the loading bay will cause significant noise and disruption. At present, deliveries are made late into the evening, which disrupts sleep. Moving this closer to property boundaries will result in further disruption to the residents. There is no requirement for a larger store. There is also no requirement for increased car parking. The car park is never full. On Sundays, it gets busy and there are a few minutes wait for a car parking space, but this is normal for most supermarkets. The proposed 6 dwellings are not in keeping with current properties on that street. Appearance and design of development and materials proposed. The 6 new dwellings are new build and not in keeping with the character of the street. I cannot see any designated parking on the plans. Any visitors will also work in limited parking on the surrounding streets. Highway safety. The increased car parking will result in traffic congestion at present, and it's difficult to exit Wellington Street onto Mountain Road. This will also worsen given the increase in traffic caused by the increased footfall to Aldi. The proposed building of 6 new dwellings will add parking issues to the surrounding streets. This again makes it dangerous in terms of highway safety. Exiting onto Mountain Road is already dangerous as it is a blind corner unless pulling out to be seen both ways. Increasing traffic will make this safety issue worse. Traffic and parking issues. The proposed extension to the car park will result in high volumes of traffic. It is already difficult to leave the one-way system pulling out onto Mountain Road. Increased traffic will make this issue worse. Some customers who are able to park at Aldi use surrounding areas to do so, including Albert Street. This will still worsen the store increase in size, particularly around key times as Christmas. Parking on Albert Street is already sparse and residents should be able to park their vehicles in the road in which they live. Staff parking on surrounding streets will also be an issue. The new dwellings do not appear to have designated parking. Where are these residents going to park? Drainage and flood risk. During heavy rains, can be heard on Aldi's roof. Damage, which is a noise issue. Should Aldi be extending this, will be directly behind some properties and will cause noise nuisance. Aldi will be using the public tour utilised by residents nearby. This will put extra pressure on the system. Noise, dust and fumes. These will be increased, not at least by the loading bay, being directly behind residents' gardens. The noise from the chilling units is disruptive, and even more so when they are relocated close to property boundaries. There will be additional fumes to increase traffic, which is again directly behind the gardens. As we all know, carbon emissions from
Time is
idle
up,
vehicles...
Councillor Gerard. Councillor Gerard, apologies, time is up.
Right.
Okay, thank you. Can I invite Deborah Liggins to come back in and comment on anything that's been, anything she's heard?
Yes, thank you, Chair. If we could just have the plan of the elevations back up on the screen, if possible. Slide 8. That's it, thank you. Oh, gone a bit too far. The one, that's it, thank you. Members, well, some of the speakers tonight were talking about loss of privacy and loss of daylight. I draw members' attention particularly to the bottom drawing, which shows the rear elevation of the extension as backing onto the Albert Street dwellings. The extension itself contains no overlooking windows, and the building is due north of those properties. So in terms of losses of daylight and sunlight, in terms of the assessment for losses of light and daylight, it's considered that that's meets our guidance in terms of the 45-degree rule, in terms of how we assess those impacts. As I've mentioned previously in the presentation, the loading bay, you can see on the dotted line on the bottom, goes down a ramp so that vehicles would be more or less obscured by the proposed acoustic fence, and that acoustic fence would eliminate noise down to an acceptable level, according to the Council's Environmental Health Department. Similarly, with the noise emissions from plant and equipment, it's recommended in condition 13 that be operated in accordance with the noise assessment that was submitted and the limits imposed on that are enforceable by our own team in-house. What else did we have? Councillor Gerard, I think it was talking about the extra traffic on the one-way system around Albert Street and Wellington Street, and how difficult it is to pull out onto Melton Road. But there's a balancing to be done between the amount of extra traffic that the housing would generate and the reduction in traffic as a result of the relocation of the Syston Doors business, that, as we've heard tonight, includes lots of larger and goods vehicles these days. So the Highway Authority have considered the transport assessment that was submitted, which includes an assessment of the capacity of those junctions onto Melton Road, and have found that to be acceptable. The issues about drainage and sewerage, and the sound of rainfall, that's an existing problem. I'm guessing that the extensions won't significantly add to that. In terms of the drainage and sewage, yes, it's proposed to connect to an existing system, and there are no known flooding issues within that part of Syston. I'm just looking to see if anybody else wants to add, any of the other officers.
Anybody else want to jump in on this? If not, I'm going to move to the first person who wants to comment on this. No, I can't see anybody else indicating. So, Joan Tassell. Sorry, Deborah Liggins, you want to come back?
There was another point that I forgot to mention, was the Councillor Gerard was talking about there being a lack of parking and that the design of the new houses wasn't in keeping with the surrounding houses and didn't include car parking. Well, as the presentation said, the housing element is in an outline only. There's no submitted design details at this stage, and parking would be expected to be included within any reserve matters submission. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Tassell.
Thank you. I've got loads and loads of notes here on this. Syston Doors, I don't think we've got anything to worry about there. They're moving for their own convenience. They're going to keep their workforce, and that they are going to stay within Charnwood. I don't think we should even think about the loss of employment with that. I was going to ask what direction is this being built in, but our officer said that it's to the north of the Victorian houses. Is that right? Thank you.
Yes, that's correct.
Yes. I'm more than pleased to see that they are going to keep the lovely Victorian wall to the factory along, was it Albert Street or Victoria Street? One of the other, I don't know Syston
Victoria
at all.
Street.
I don't know Syston at all, but that wall was fantastic, and it's a shame to just see it bulldozed down and a modern thing put in. My one thing is with this is that it's a huge grey building, and I'm wondering, we've not had any idea of what the landscaping's going to be. But can we make it that some of the landscaping goes, that enough room is left between the borders of the gardens to these Victorian houses and the building to put some trees in, to break it all up a bit, and also if there are more denser trees put around the building, around the unloading area, of course it will also help with noise as well. And I know this will come in with the detailed planning, because there's no detailed planning yet with this. But I do think that a bit more landscaping to encourage some wildlife and some trees would be far better than it looks so stark at the moment. Could that be put in as a condition, please?
Okay, thank you for that. Jacqueline Jackson has been indicating to speak, but I've actually got Councillor Grimley next. So if I take you, Councillor Grimley next, followed by Jacqueline Jackson.
I'll be happy if you take Jackie first. You might answer some of my queries.
Right, that's okay. That's fantastic. So Jacqueline, if you'd like to step up, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify a few things that Councillor Tassell had raised. Councillor Tassell, you're talking about the big expanse of the building. I think it's important for members to recognise that the vast majority, you know, to the most part, that's an existing building. They're just extending the current store, and so you can't move it and you can't plant between the existing store and the neighbours. That's just not enough room there. So I don't think that we'll be able to get trees in that location. We have to recognise that they're just continuing the design of the building that's in place. I just wanted to also clarify the fact that this is a hybrid. I don't want there to be any misunderstanding about this. So the extension to the store is in full. You know, we have all that details, and we would be, if it was approved, you would be approving full planning permission for the extension to the store, the boundary walls, round the and fencing round the car park and the car parking and the landscape associated with the car parking. That's all in full. It's only the housing element that's outlined. So just to clarify that point.
Okay, thank you.
Very quickly, Chairman. It is very quickly. Can it
Yes,
not be
okay.
made so that some trees could be put near the unloading bay? Because we have an Asda at Shepshed, and the unloading from the lorries is quite loud. And of course, trees will deaden noise if it could be looked at.
Before you answer that, Jacqueline, I would have thought that putting trees near a loading bay would be the wrong thing to do, because if you're getting leaves blowing off, you're going to have a slippery surface, and it's going to be on a ramp, as well as leaves blowing into the loading bay, probably mounding up somewhere and attracting vermin. So I'd be completely against that idea. So if we can take Councillor Daniel Grimley next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think it is basically, in a nutshell, an extension to existing supermarket. I know it's sort of stating the obvious, but I think on balance, listening to the argument so far, I think sort of the benefits here are outweighing the outweighing the cons, and certainly, it gives an opportunity for additional parking areas in the store, which is lacking at the moment to a degree. There are a number of existing highway problems in Syston, but this isn't going to really alter any of those. So I'm going to go for a proposed officer's recommendation.
Thank you for that, Councillor Grimley. Next I have, well, first of all, do I have a seconder for that?
I'd second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe. So next is Councillor Fryer.
Thank you. I was going to second that as well. I think what it is it's an existing store that's 15 years old. They're not built in Victorian style or brick. It needs modernising for everybody's sake, for customers, staff. I mean, they're increasing the parking, and also they are putting up acoustic fencing. They have done on the extras report, we've seen about the condition about the bats and things like that. They've done ecological things. And I think also I have to agree that it's very difficult on an existing parking lot to make it softened with trees and shrubs. So if Councillor Lowe hadn't seconded, I would have seconded. I think also it must be understood that the Syston Doors, they are only basing that they can keep their business going and keep their staff employed by selling that land, which is really out of date now. It's a very old building and they need to modernise and move forward. So yes, it's a bonus for them, but not in many ways. If anybody's ever relocated a business, it's not an easy thing. So on balance, I think this is a benefit, and therefore I will be supporting it. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Fryer. Jacqueline Jackson, you want to come back in?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It's just a clarification question for Councillor Grimley and his recommendation. Just to confirm that your recommendation with officer, in line with officer recommendation, includes the additional conditions set out in the extras report?
Yes, that's correct.
And does it also include the advice at the beginning of the item from Catherine, where you delegate the final wording of condition 2 back to us, but on the understanding that the wording needs to be changed from the first application of reserved matters to the final application of reserved matters?
Yes, that's correct as well. I'm happy with that as well. Thanks.
Right, thank you for that clarification. Councillor Campbell, and then if there's nobody else wanting to come in with anything substantially different, we'll be then going to the vote. So Councillor Campbell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was very pleased that ecology got a mention, and Aldi's going to spend some money on bat boxes. The planting scheme, can the officers assure us this time that it will be native shrub planting, unlike when we gave permission for the Roughborough stores, Aldi stores? I asked for native stuff there and it was never implemented. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. So it's been proposed by Councillor Grimley, seconded by Councillor.
An assurance from officers that native shrub planting would be.
I'm sorry. Debbie, you want to come back in on that?
Yes, condition number 10 asks for details of landscaping, and that's certainly something that we would be encouraging to. In addition, the Council's ecologist has recommended that they include species that are attractive to invertebrate species. So we'll be looking at the submitted planting scheme very carefully.
Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Okay, so it's been proposed by Councillor Grimley, seconded by Councillor Lowe. The additional bits of information has been added on by Jacqueline Jackson, so we're clear about that. So I'm going to go to the vote. So I'm going to ask if you're for, against, or abstain in alphabetical order, starting with Councillor Bolton, please.
I'm abstaining, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Campbell.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Capleton.
For.
Councillor Charles.
Thank you, Chair. I am for.
Councillor Forrest.
Thank you, Chair. I'm for officer's recommendation.
Has Ian frozen? Do you want me to...
I think we've lost Councillor Bentley.
Shall I take over?
Yes, please.
Righto. So Councillor Grimley.
Thank you, Chair. I'm for.
Thank you, Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. I'm for.
Councillor Ransom.
Thank you, Chair. I'm for.
Councillor Savage.
Thank you, Chair. I'm for.
Councillor Tassell.
Thank you, Chair. I'm for.
Thank you. And Councillor Ward.
Thank you, Chair. I'm for the proposal.
Thank you. And I am for the proposal. And as we've lost Councillor Bentley, we can't say how he would be voting. So if I could go to Nadia or Catherine to confirm the result, please.
Yeah, that's the motion. Sorry, the proposal carried with a vote of 11 councillors voting for the proposition and 1 abstention, and there was no vote from Councillor Bentley on this item.
Yes. Thank you very much. I think Councillor Bentley is trying to phone me, so I'll tell him I'm. Hello.
Could someone please confirm? Sorry, could someone please confirm that I counted correctly?
Yeah.
Counted.
So, and Chair, I confirmed that there were 11 votes for and 1 abstention. So the motion is carried. Thank you.
Like to contact Councillor Bentley by phone, one of the officers. I'll go back. I was going to take over the meeting now anyway, so I'll continue. But thank him very much for doing the last 2 applications. So we now move on to application number 4, which is P/20/1161/2, which is 18 Byron Street Extension at Loughborough. Now, I believe that Councillor Forrest is speaking to this, so she'll be taking no part in this discussion or anything. So we'll go to the, Deborah, are you presenting this as well?
Yes, I am.
Oh, sorry, Catherine, you wanted to come in quickly.
Sorry, thank you. I'm not sure. I think we usually Councillor Forrest turn her video off too.
Yes.
If she's not taking part in an item.
If you wouldn't mind, Councillor Forrest, if you could turn your video off. Thank you. And right, over to you, Deborah.
You can have the presentation, please. Thank you, Nadia. So item 4 tonight's on page 68 of your agenda, relates to change of use. Oh, that's not it.
We'll get there in a minute.
There we go.
There we are.
A change of use of number 18 Byron Street extension in Loughborough from a class C3 dwelling to a house in multiple occupation, use class C4. The application is called before Plans Committee at the request of Councillor Forrest, who has concerns about the parking at the site and the impact of the change of use on other residents within the street. Next slide, please. This is the location of the site. It's on the south side of Byron Street extension. It's a 3-bedroom house, which is set in a mix of residential dwellings, and on Byron Street as well. To the west, you can see there's large commercial buildings. Opposite and further along is the deliveries entrance to the Range store, accessed off Byron Street extension, and you can see this store and the other shops that form part of the retail Willowbrook Park. Next slide, please. So the application property is in the middle of the top photo. It's a bay-fronted hip-roofed dwelling with a low brick wall to the front and a driveway leading to frontage, which is entirely hard surfaced, and where there are at least 2 parking spaces. The photo at the bottom shows the property on the left in relation to the treed amenity land that's at the rear of the Range store, and gives you a general character of the street, which is a comparatively wide road with no parking restrictions in operation in the vicinity of the dwellings. Next slide, please. So this is a revised floor plan received on the 19th of August, which shows just 1 bedroom to the ground floor and 2 first floor bedrooms. The original proposal would have seen the ground floor room, now indicated as the communal lounge, as a 4th bedroom, but that would have left only the small conservatory at the back of the house as the only internal amenity space for tenants. This was considered by officers to be a poor option, given the size of the conservatory and its thermal inefficiencies. So the applicant has agreed to reinstate the middle room downstairs as a larger internal shared space. Next slide, please. So the key considerations: members will be familiar with proposals of this nature, and the way they're usually assessed is set out in the officer report. Supporting text for policy CS4 recognises that houses in multiple occupation provide residential accommodation for groups of tenants who don't live together as a family, but who share facilities and have separate bedrooms. The policy acknowledges that housing of this type is a popular choice in meeting local housing requirements by people on lower incomes, employed people or students. The application site lies within the Storer ward, where there are acknowledged high concentrations of houses in multiple occupation, and members will be familiar with the impact those high concentrations have had on settled community members and the problems that have been often associated with them. It's considered that the dwelling would remain residential in use, and the proposal is within the main urban area of Loughborough, and as a residential use it would be acceptable in principle in accordance with policy CS3. However, we also need to consider the other impacts as listed on the slide. So In terms of the impact on change of use on the social and physical character of the area, the threshold approach that we have set out in the adopted SPD on housing, in terms of that, the council are able to identify that there's only one other house in multiple occupation within a 100-metre radius of the site. The proposal therefore represents a saturation rate of just 2.7%, which is well below the 20% threshold at which social and physical impacts of the neighbouring properties and community are more felt. Whilst this isn't a determinative factor in itself, the site is so located that there are no other purpose-built halls of accommodation or concentrations of HMOs just outside the 100-metre circle that we need to consider. So given the low number of houses in multiple occupation and predominantly residential surroundings of the site, it's considered that the proposal would not impact significantly on the character of the area. So in terms of antisocial behaviour and noise, these are set out more fully on page 77 of the agenda. Information from the council's partnerships on community safety indicate that incidents over the last 12 months are comparatively low compared to other areas of the town where there are higher concentrations of HMOs. It's concluded that proposal would not result in significant increases of antisocial behaviour or exacerbate the existing situation. In terms of noise, HMOs can often be noisier than family occupation because of the number of people living independently within the building, but in this case 3 bedrooms are proposed. Whilst these are technically of a size that meets standard for double occupation, and a class C4 use would permit up to 6 persons sharing the house, it's more likely that 3 individuals would occupy the dwelling. And it's recommended that if permission is granted, a condition be imposed to limit the number of bedrooms to 3 and to tie the application to that approved drawing showing 3 bedrooms. In terms of bin storage, there's ample space to the rear of the property as existing. There are no changes proposed to the outside appearance of the house. And it's considered the proposal would accord with policy CS4 in terms of visual impact and residential amenities. In terms of highways and parking, the property benefits from existing driveway and frontage parking that meets current standards for a 3-bedroomed house. Although residents report congestion in the street from people parking and then commuting to distant workplaces via public transport, this isn't within the remit of the applicant to rectify. As the amount of car parking within the site is sufficient to meet the needs arising from the proposal, it's considered that there are no highway-related reasons to justify a refusal of planning permission. So in conclusion, it's considered that the proposal would not result in an over-concentration of HMOs in the area that would cause community imbalance, and I've set out that it's your office's view that the proposal wouldn't result in harm to the residential character or amenity of the area and wouldn't be detrimental to highway safety. It's therefore concluded the proposal would accord with policies as set out in the report, and it's recommended planning permission is granted subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. We have the ward councillor, Councillor Forrest.
Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Excuse me. Sorry, just catching up. Okay.
Yes, when you're ready.
Madam Chair, members of the Plans Committee, thank you for allowing me to speak to you this evening. I'm here to represent the residents of the Byron Street extension who are very concerned about this application. They see no reason why this family house in an attractive residential street should become a HMO. and they believe that this application seems to be an attempt to regularise the situation with the property, as earlier this year, up to the first lockdown, they believe that there were up to 9 people living in this house, not of the same family. Parking. The officer's report states that there is a driveway parking in front of the house for 2 cars, and more is available on the hard surface front of the house. But my resident living next door to this property is constantly inconvenienced by cars and vans from the property in question parking across her driveway and being, well, it's not too strong a word to say, being abused when she asks for them to be moved. The street is on the edge of an industrial estate with many lorries and vans coming and going during the day. I was intrigued to see the photograph that Ms. Liggins showed of an empty street, because it's not often like that. The street is on several occasions in the month used as an impromptu overnight lorry park, and is also frequently used as an overspill car park by the Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses across the road. This causes great difficulty with parking and negotiating the street, residents trying to get off to work or come back to work, access their own homes, and are unable to do so by waiting for lorries to negotiate the street. And they believe that additional parking and traffic movement from an HMO would simply exacerbate the situation. And I'm sorry to report to you that reports have been received by Leicestershire Police of the street being unfortunately used as a drug drop-off point on occasions. And as you can imagine, this causes some distress to the residents. Community. However, I want to tell you that Byron Street Extension is an area of great character and good amenities. It has community balance and a good neighbourhood spirit. As one resident said to me, we are all invested in each other. The residents are very concerned that allowing this HMO would have a detrimental effect on the spirit of the neighbourhood. They do not understand why a 3-bedroom family home cannot remain as Class 3 accommodation, as this would perhaps encourage a family to move in and join this very supportive community in an area of good schools and transport links. Antisocial behaviour. You will see on page 7 of the excellent report that we've received from our officers that in the last year, 27 incidents of antisocial behaviour have been reported in the area. That's actually quite a lot in what is actually a small area. So residents are already affected by unpleasant behaviour, and they believe that allowing this house to become a HMO,
1 minute.
That kind of behaviour will just continue. I appreciate that this is a difficult application for you to turn down, but I encourage you to be courageous and attempt to stop the incursion of yet another HMO in an area that is at present mercifully free of them. And I also ask that if you are minded to approve this, you ask the officers if they will check that the accommodation at present being worked on is the same as the original, is the same as the revised application, and not the original one as proposed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Deborah Liggins, did you want to come back?
Only to comment really on the incidents of antisocial behaviour as reported in the on page 77. There have been 27 reported incidents, but these include very, very long streets in Loughborough, the whole of Derby Road, Knightthorpe Road, are very long streets, so it doesn't necessarily indicate that the problems occurred within Byron Street extension, because we did look at any street within 100 metres of the site, even if it's only a part of that street. The community safety report on incidents on the whole length of that road. So just to say, it doesn't necessarily indicate a problem.
Okay, thank you. Could I just request that Councillor Forrest?
Yes, I'm doing it now.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, so we'll go now. I have one hand up, and that's Councillor Tassell. Councillor Tassell?
Yes, it's a shame, really. It is a nice family house. It's one of the nice 1930s villa houses, which are well built and very nice, and they were very popular in the day. My concern is that there's only one other house in this area. This is another one. How soon before another one and another one and another one before we get the old street done? I wouldn't be able to support this recommendation.
Okay. I think, as you know, Councillor, we can't presume that there will be more. We have to take each application on its individual thing. We can't presume that there will be more and more. And Knightsthorpe Road is a very long road. Before I move to Councillor Campbell.
Sorry, it's Byron Street, not Knightsthorpe Road, and Byron Street is quite a small road.
Yeah, but don't. Councillor Jacqueline, did you want to come in?
Yeah, it's just to bring councillors back to the development plan. As we know, we have to start with the development plan, and all proposals should be considered against the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. We do have a HMO policy, so I'd refer councillors to look at that. And the way that the council currently, under the current development plan, looks at HMOs is a threshold approach. So we understand what Councillor Tassell is saying. There historically has been this slip where areas fall to be the majority to be HMOs, and that's why we have the threshold approach that is currently at 20%. So that concern, that's the trigger point in the policy that the council has adopted to say that's when it becomes too much. So it's really just to bring members back to the development plan. If you're going to go against the development plan, you have to have really strong material considerations as to why you're doing that. So it's just to re-emphasise those points.
Thank you very much, Jacqueline. Now, also, I'll move to Councillor Campbell. When we come to consider it, if committee should be minded to approve this, there is another condition we mustn't forget that has been recommended that we add to it. The condition that about to stay as a 3-bedroomed house. Was that not mentioned?
That's already in the report, Chair. Condition number 3.
Thank you very much. Right, Councillor Campbell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I get what Ms Jackson's saying, but I still agree with the last councillor that it's just the one foot in the door, and before we know it, it'll end up like the other side of Knightsthorpe Road, where Paget Street, the Golden Triangle is. I mean, I lived there in 1980, where one student house appeared, and within 30 years, it's 90% students. So, I'm finding it hard to go with officers, I'm afraid.
Yes, I appreciate that. I think what Jacqueline Jackson was saying is there must be good planning reasons why it can't be. But anyway, I'll move on. I've got 2 more speakers, Councillor Lowe and followed by Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Chair. I know nobody wants to see HMOs, and this was just referred to as student accommodation. It might not be student accommodation, it might be professional accommodation, but there is no reason for refusal of this. I know nobody wants to see it, but I propose we go with officer's recommendation, Chair.
Thank you very much.
I'll second that.
Righto, Councillor Bentley.
That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. I see no more hands at the moment. Did anybody else want to make a comment? Well, then we will go to the vote. It's been proposed that we accept officers' recommendations, and by Councillor Lowe, and it's seconded by Councillor Bentley. So I'll now go through the alphabetical voting. So Councillor Bentley. Councillor Bentley.
Guys, sorry, that is 4, Chair. Sorry.
Thank you. Councillor Bolton.
Against, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Camsell.
Against, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Capleton.
For.
Councillor Charles.
For, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Forrest. Oh no, she's not voting. Councillor Grimley.
Thank you, Chair, for the officer's proposal.
Councillor Lowe.
For, Chair.
Councillor Ransom.
For, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Savage. Councillor Savage. I think you're muted, Councillor Savage.
It. For the officer's recommendations, my battery just went boom straight off.
Okay,
Sorry.
That's all right. Councillor Tassell.
Against, Chairman.
And Councillor Ward.
Against, Chair.
Okay, and myself, Councillor Fryer, I'm for. If I could ask Catherine to confirm the numbers, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. That was a vote in favour of the proposition for following the officer's recommendation. The vote was 8 in favour, 4 against, and Councillor Forrest didn't take part in the vote.
Okay.
And Chair, I confirm the votes for was 8 and against was 4, and therefore the proposal is carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. We now move on to the last application of the evening, which is P/20/1027/2, and Councillor Forrest needs to come back in. Okay, Sandy, I can see you there.
Thank you.
There's no speakers on this, but it's just a presentation by the officers. And Karen, are you doing this one?
Yes.
Thank you very much. It shouldn't take very long, this.
No, no more than an hour, don't worry.
Oh, good.
If I could just have the presentation, please.
Thank you.
It's item 5 tonight, which is the extension of an existing drop curb on Seagrave Road in Sarby. It's brought to committee because it's a council employee's planning application. Next slide, please. This just shows where it is, property outlined in red. Next slide, please. Just zoomed in a little bit more so you can see the extent of the drop curb there that runs across the front of the property as proposed and totals 5.5 metres in width. Next slide, please. This is just a photograph of the property, so you can see there's a curb there at the moment, and that would be removed obviously as part of the application. Next slide, please. So just 3 issues really to consider. Whether dropping the curb is in keeping with the character of the area. Officers' recommendation is that it is. There are several similar drop curbs in the area, so it's not an unusual feature to see. Secondly, amenity. There are no impacts on neighbouring amenity. There are no objections, in fact, to the planning application from neighbours. And thirdly and finally, highway safety. The Highway Authority have been consulted. They point out that the application is onto a classified road, so needs planning permission, which we obviously know, which is why it's here. But they have no objections to the proposal and are happy that it's safe. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Right, we now go to see, let me just get my, right, I've got Councillor Grimley, Councillor Ranson, Councillor Tassell. Councillor Grimley.
Thank you, Chair. Can I propose officer's recommendation?
Righto. Councillor Ranson.
Thank you, Chair. Can I second that?
Thank you. And Councillor Tassell.
I was going to second it, Madam Chairman.
Okay. Right. No more people want to discuss that. So we'll go to the vote. And that is proposed by Councillor Grimley, seconded by Councillor Ransom, that we accept officer's recommendation. Okay. So Councillor Bentley.
For the recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Bolton.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Capleton.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Charles.
For the recommendation, thank you.
Councillor Forrest.
For the recommendation, thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Grimley.
Thank you, Chair. For the recommendation.
Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. For the application.
Councillor Ransom.
For the application, Chair.
Councillor Savage.
For the recommendation, Chair.
Councillor Tassell.
For the recommendation.
Right, and Councillor Ward.
For, Chair.
Thank you very much. And
Councillor Campbell needs to vote.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Campbell. I do apologise.
Okay, Chair, thank you. I'm for, thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Fryer. So if Catherine could just confirm the votes, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. That was a vote in favour of officer's recommendation, and it was unanimous, a vote of 13.
Thank you very much.
And Madam Chair, I can confirm that it was unanimous as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, we now come on to the last item, which is the information of delegated decisions made since our last meeting. And unless anybody's got anything vital to discuss on this thing, we normally just note it. Is that all right? Everybody agreed? Thank you. I see no hands up, so I'm accepting that. So I'm going to close the meeting. I have asked all of you if you wouldn't mind just staying for a couple of minutes, and that includes the officers, please. I'll literally keep you just a couple of minutes. So thank you very much. It's been a long meeting, quite complicated, but I do appreciate all your diligence in making it as successful as possible. Our next meeting will be on the 29th of October at 5 p.m. So if someone can